This is Humans of Tech, episode 004, with me, Chris Morrow. I have a bit of a bio here that I'm going to read out on our next guest. And there's only one of these things which is untrue. See if you can work out which one it is. So my next guest got fired twice in 1 year from his job. He burnt his house down. He was on the KGB wanted list. He appeared on Have I Got News? He caused a national security alert. He broke his neck and survived, and is on the 40 over 40 list. My next guest is none other than Jon Evans, Chief Marketing Officer and host of the Uncensored CMO podcast. He's currently the CMO of System One Group, previously CMO of Brewdog, Lucozade, Ribena, and a whole host of other really interesting companies. Jon, very welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Chris. It's great to be here. And can I say how much fun it is being on the other side, not asking the questions?
I know. I was saying to you a moment ago, I feel like Luke Skywalker interviewing Obi-Wan, and I'm a more seasoned podcast host interviewing. Sorry, less seasoned podcast.
I tell you the weird thing is, usually I'm in control because I've got the questions, and now I feel I'm out of control now because you could ask me anything. I know.
You're exposed. I like it.
I am.
I like it. Well, where we'll start is where we always start on the podcast, which is right at the beginning. So, give us a rundown of who you are now, and then we'll go back to where it all started for you and where it all began.
Yeah, great. So listen, CMO, as you said, of System One, we basically are the experts in testing advertising. So what we do is basically we help people test their advertising and improve their advertising. And actually, I used to be a client of System One, which is how I ended up getting this job, because when I was at Lucozade, we used System One to test our ads, and I loved it so much I joined them. It's kind of the thing.
Poached, love it.
Yes, exactly that. But actually, the podcast is quite a fun one because, as you said in your intro, actually one of the things that is true on your list, actually, well, they're all true except for one, as you said. But one of the true ones is I got fired twice in 1 year. So I found myself freelancing, and I never thought I would. Actually, I always thought, I'll always have a good job and earn the money. But I suddenly found myself out of my ear, and I found podcasting to be a really great way to meet people and to network within the industry. So I wanted to listen to marketing podcasts. I couldn't find any that I liked. I mean, literally, that there were just no good quality marketing podcasts out there. So I thought, well, maybe I should get off my arse and set one up. And that's where that came from. Yeah,
that's where most of the world's great ideas come from, basically.
Yes. Frustration. I can't buy it, so I'm going to go and invent it. Yeah,
and go and invent it myself. Yeah. Good man. So let's talk. Let's go back to the start, and we'll tell us where your life began and a bit of background.
Yeah. So I'm originally, you might not hear it in my accent, but I was born in Wales, in the valleys. In fact, Neath in Wales. Right. So that my family ancestry all comes from that part of the world. And my dad was actually a forester, and he's a kind of expert on growing trees in tropical climates, which is a rather exotic thing to do. So the first few years of my life were basically being dragged around remote places. So we lived in Papua New Guinea, we lived in Swaziland, we lived in Philippines, places like that. And so my first few years were spent, kind of traveling and going to rather exotic places. Well, of course, once I started school, they moved back to the UK, and so I had a more traditional upbringing from that point onwards. But
so you were born when, what was it, 1974, was it?
Yeah, 1897. No, I mean, no, yeah, that's
1876.
Yeah, exactly. No, 1974, which is according to my daughters, the world was black and white. Back then, it was the olden days, Daddy, the olden days. When you didn't have mobile phones and Instagram, but 1974.
So your mum and dad both Welsh, and how did they?
Well, my dad Yeah, my dad's side, they met actually they met at Scout and Guides actually. So they were, they had a kind of an inter Scout and Guide ping pong competition.
Nice.
And as they tell me, they ended up in the final playing against each other, and then I think my dad offered to walk my mum home after the ping pong was over, and
Lovely.
that's where it began. But it's my dad's side is Welsh, and my mum's side is English and Scottish,
Right.
which makes you pretty Celtic, I suppose, doesn't it? If you can blend them together.
Good mix there.
Yeah,
I like it.
yeah.
Any brothers or sisters or?
Yeah, two brothers. So I'm one of three brothers. So three boys. I'm the oldest, which kind of means I was the one that did everything first and also got into trouble. My parents were much stricter on me than they were on my brothers. They got it easy.
I'm one of four. I'm one of four boys, but I'm the youngest. So
I was
you
get away with murder then.
I got away with murder a little bit, and also my brothers are a lot older than me. Like my oldest brother's 13 years older than me.
Okay.
He's it's quite a big, a big gap. So he was already in high school when I was born, and
so he'd be driving cars before you even started school then.
Oh, big time, yeah. So I had the whole spectrum of brothers, sort of like big brothers looking after me and beating me up on occasion, and all of this sort of stuff.
Quite handy if you're out on a night out and get into trouble. You can kind of call it in, can't you? Bros, get down here now quickly. I need some backup.
That's it. Yeah, no one messed with the Morrow brothers. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Good man. So talk me through those early years. Then when you came back to the UK, where did you land, and where did you kind of grow up?
Yeah, so I ended up growing up in Hampshire, a little town called Alton, sort of between Basingstoke and Winchester. I have to say, looking back now, of course, you don't realise it at the time, but a really lovely place to kind of grow up. Very little crime, lovely neighbourhoods. Got to do lots of sport. Got to, had great friends. Got to, really, really nice place to grow up. Really, very, very kind of fond memories of there. I was as a kid, I was into, like most kids are, into music and sport and stuff like that, and so got stuck into lots of ththings. Had a really good upbringing around there.
That's good. What was your sport? Did you play a few things, or were you just more into one? Or
I mean, I loved everything. I was one of those kind of kids that would pretty much go out and do everything. So I was on the rugby team, the cricket team, the football team, athletics team. I love skateboarding. So we'd do that. So I think I probably held some sort of record for breaking bones. I ended up in A&E quite a lot. My poor mum had to take me quite a few times. But the thing, my real passion actually was running. So I did that to a pretty good standard. I think my peak of my powers was under 14s national championships, came third at Crystal Palace. And I unfortunately I've lost the photo now, but I wish I kept it. But someone took a photo with my name on the scoreboard, running around the track, and it was just like somewhere you watch on TV where you kind of see Linford Christie and people like that doing their thing, and then to run on the same track and see my name on the board, it was one of my highlights. And then also used to love kind of trying to break records at school as well. And we had this. I've got I think the all-time 300-meter record, which sounds a bit bizarre, but our school didn't have a very big field, and so they made the running track 300 meters rather than 400. So we did the 100, 200, and 300. Normally you do the 400. And then I think I got the record in the second year for the school record 300 meters, and then I think they then cancelled Sports Day, because it was in the 80s when the teachers' strikes were on. So I kind of like to think that my record still stands,
Unbeaten.
I'm sure they've reinstated it, and they've probably got a proper 400-meter track now. But undisputed 300-meter champion of Alton, Hampshire.
That photo you just mentioned would have been a brilliant social media post nowadays with the name in the background and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot, I guess, that isn't great about social media, but one of the things that is, it's like this amazing record, isn't it, of what you do? Because right, I've got so few things from those days, and I remember, my mum coming and taking lots of photos of me at different, sporting events. And I didn't think anything of it at the time. And now I've got kids. Of course, my kids at bedtime are chat. So, Daddy, when because of course they're now doing the things I was doing, and they're in the running clubs and they're playing football. And of course, go, well, when I was a lad, I did this, and I wish I could show them.
I know, yeah. It is bad, isn't it? I mean, I think I've got one video from when I was like my whole childhood, basically, and that was of my first birthday, and the camera was like on someone's shoulder type thing. It was like a real like luxury thing to like having like. I was born in 1982, and it's like a 15-minute video, and it's so precious because it's got, you can hear like like my mum's voice. My mum's no longer with us, unfortunately, so you can hear her voice and you can see just like what people are wearing and the house we used to live in, all these memories, and you just think, bloody hell, it'd be so good to have more of that. Do you know what I mean?
Do you know what? You just reminded me of something, actually. My talking about mums, my mum passed away 3 months after I got married, and we've got virtually no video at all of her, because you think you're going to have your mum forever. I mean, you just don't ever imagine that sort of thing happen. And I remember after she died, desperately going through every photo album, every video collection, and I can just about hear her voice in the background on our wedding day. She's just audible, slightly off camera, chatting to a friend, and that's the only audio I've got of her. That's the only evidence.
It slips from your mind after a while, doesn't it?
It does.
And then you feel like guilty, thinking, I can't remember what she sounds like. And
I remember my mum was always leaving me messages on the landline, right? Because she'd always think of something. I know. It's like, she'd remind me, have you remembered to do your insurance? Or, it'd be something practical like that. It's like, I'm 22, maybe like that kind of thing. And I just cleared the answer machine like a few days before she died. And I was just like, weirdly, it's funny how little things kind of play on you, don't they? But I so regret clearing that, because I'd literally have recorded it, and all her little voice messages, reminding me of, to do stuff and that kind of thing.
When my first daughter was born, I had a guy I worked with at the time, said to me, and we passed by each other, and we were like washing hands in like the gents' toilet at work or whatever, and he knew that we'd had a kid, and he was a quiet guy, didn't really say too much, and he sort of remember, and always stuck with me. He said, whatever you do, take videos, as many videos as you can get. Photos are great, but once you start taking videos on your phone, if you think you're going to take a photo, just take a video instead. And then when they get a little bit older and you look back on it, you can see the change that's happening. It's probably one of the best bits of advice anyone that I've worked with has ever given.
That is amazing. That is I wish I'd done that. I wish I'd done that.
Just to see the metamorphosis of change and just getting older, even in such short spaces of time, you think, because you forget all of these like small details, don't you?
Yeah. Someone I worked with a few years ago, actually, he's based in Holland. He writes a letter to his, I can't remember if he's got a son or daughter, but anyway, he writes a letter to her every single day and takes a photo in the same position every single day. And his idea is when she gets to 18, he's going to put it all together as one kind of big long letter and one big kind of photo, speeded up, through the years. And I just thought, man, that is such a thoughtful... Every day, yeah.
Every day.
Yes.
God.
Yeah. He sets an alarm, same time every day, and he's going to string it all together to be literally, this is your life in letter and in photo.
That the commitment behind that is like phenomenal.
Yeah.
Phenomenal. That puts me to shame on the dad's
I know. Sure. I felt terrible.
I can't even get my daughter to go to football one time. Awesome. So how long did you live in was it Hampshire? Yeah. Did you live there your whole childhood, or did you move around? Or?
Yeah, no, pretty much based there, which was lovely. So made some good friends, had a lovely time, and then obviously I moved out at university kind of time. I guess what most people do is go and try and get a degree and get a job and stuff. So moved out 17 or 18, whatever it was, to go to the big bold university.
Amazing. Let's backtrack a bit and tell me about the story that you told me about your most famous relative, because we've got to get that in.
Oh yeah, my most famous Welsh connection. Yeah, so this is kind of a sweet story actually. But I think it's my great, or it might be three greats uncle. So on my dad's side, it was his dad's uncle. Yeah, I think it's the right connection. He was a mountaineer, and he's not famous, but he was almost incredibly famous because he actually led the expedition up Everest on the first ascent with Edmund Hillary. And so he and Hillary, basically, I'm not sure if they drew lots on who was going to go first, but it ended up my great uncle Charles Evans ended up making the first attempt on Everest. Now, what happened is he climbed up, and then he got within 75 meters of the summit. So he got really close, and then his oxygen started failing, and he had to make a calculation, which was either to risk it but potentially not have enough oxygen to get back down, or save his oxygen, get back down, and give what he had left over to Hillary, and with all the notes about, which route to take and what the conditions were like and stuff like that. So he actually decided to turn back within 75 meters of the summit, which must have been, what a thing to do. What a decision to make. You can imagine, like, oxygen starved, you're exhausted, but you're on the edge of making history, and you make the decision, like, in that moment, I'm going to go down and give it to my colleague and help him make it, sort of thing. So for 3 days, he held the record for the highest ever ascent of any mountain. So if you look in the kind of the world records of who's climbed the highest, he has it for 3 days before Hillary then took his oxygen and took his route and made it to the top.
Yeah, amazing.
But history doesn't tend to remember, those people,
the nearly men.
Yeah.
Such a small, such a small sort of window between, like, that and
isn't it?
Like,
how close?
Written in the history books forever.
Yeah.
We were talking about this off air before we jumped on, and I was telling you that I had watched the Netflix program called Sherpa. One thing I didn't know about climbing Everest is that people do it for, like, it takes 8 weeks.
Yeah.
I just
amazing,
genuinely did not know it took that amount of time, because obviously you have to acclimatize to the to the altitude and make sure you're not getting sick. So you have to spend such a long time between base camps and stuff. So even
I think it's something like 2 weeks, isn't it? Just to get to base camp is a 2-week trek, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then, as you say, once you get into base camp 1 and base camp 2, you have to spend time there so your body can acclimatize for the next stage.
But back then, when your great uncle was, thinking the equipment or lack of, and like the the hardship that they're not going up there with, like, the latest stuff, you know what I mean, and how brutal that must have been. That's, like, just phenomenal.
Isn't it? No, absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing.
I wish I had a famous relative that I could tell dinner party stories about. But
almost. He's almost famous, isn't he? He's like, just very, very close to being super famous. Yeah, because if I guess the Evans name would be synonymous with mountaineering, wouldn't it? If he'd actually made it. So
yeah, definitely.
But it's that film is so moving, isn't it? The Sherpa film, and seeing how many people have died trying to climb the mountain, and how many
as well, how big a business it is. It's really, like, what's the word? Like, clinical, as how, like, they are so especially, like, the tour guides, they're so about, like, people's lives. It's just like, but you just keep going, and it's
it's the lead man, wasn't it? The lead Sherpa, 22 ascents of Everest, and if he did one more, he would break the record. But he was thinking of retiring because the risk, in his view, was just getting too high.
Yeah,
incredible,
it's crazy.
It's great. It's a great film.
Yeah, also, like, the way that those people are treated. just like unbelievable, you know, like they're just like commodities almost, you know. It's just horrific, a lot of those stories. But yeah, just such a super interesting point of view on something you just never really get a handle of. So yeah, fair play. So talk me through the rest of your family then, in terms of like your brothers. What did they do?
Yeah, we've all ended up doing something completely different. We're, in fact, when I first introduced my wife to the family, or my girlfriend as she was then, not my wife, she kind of said, "Are you sure you're all related?" Because we're a complete mixture. So you've got my middle brother's is super tall. He's got kind of 6'4", blonde, blue eyed. And then my younger brother's much shorter, brown hair. Oh, he's lost his hair now, but kind of much shorter, brown hair, and I'm kind of in the middle, dark. So we all, I mean, I'm joking about it, but we all take from different parts of the family, and you can kind of see, you can see a bits of family in all of us. But my dad's side, my mum's side are quite different in terms of looks. So we're kind of borrowing from different places. But and actually, it's interesting because we talking about being firstborn, how your different approaches to risk in your life as well. And that's kind of, if I look at how what my brothers have done, my middle brother, which it always makes me smile, is he's only ever been for one job interview in his entire life. Right. And he went and studied computer science at Exeter, went for one job interview with IBM, got the job, and worked there ever since.
Stayed at IBM. You could. IBM's one of the few companies, I think, in the world in tech that you could stay at for your whole career, because it's just so huge, so many. Opportunities.
I mean, he's so clever. He does the programming that the programmers use, right? So not just the programming, but he does the base kind of level programmers that the other kind of guys that need to develop use off the back of it. So he's so suited to it, which is absolutely brilliant. And then my younger brother, so 8 years between he and I. He went to Exeter as well, and he's done lots of different things, but mostly involved in kind of human resources, training, coaching, development work, that kind of thing. So he loves being with people and helping people and so on. So he's got his own consultancy called Human Talk, which is about basically developing us as humans as well, which is a lovely little kind of little business that he's created. And he's done the thing that a lot of people, I guess, do. Kind of, you get to your 30s, you've got lots of good experience behind you, and then you want to make that little jump into your own business. And super proud of him doing that.
Awesome, amazing. So pretty normal childhood, happy by the sounds of it. You grew up in a nice place. What was the plan for you when you were like growing up? Did you know like what you wanted to do, or was it something that was just like, I just know that?
Well, plan A was to become a rock star. That was definitely plan A. So that hasn't worked out. Had a school band called Livewire. So I was the bass guitarist, and it was inspired by a Motley Crue song. The one they play in Mission Impossible 2, in fact, in the opening credits. It's cool. But we kind of, we ripped off Guns N' Roses and Bon Jovi and all those big
long hair.
Semi long hair actually. But I did the whole bandana thing, leather jackets and ripped jeans, and you can imagine the whole kit and caboodle. But we had a complete blast. But we did all right. I mean, we had we had like regional battle of the bands, the kind of thing where you get all the bands facing off against each other, and then the crowd and the judges vote for that. So we used to go and do that kind of thing, and did a little bit of the pub circuit and stuff. So anyway, in our heads, we were going to be the next
do you still
international
play?
band.
Still play?
I wish I did. I tell you what it was. It was one of those decisions you make in life that, looking back, you go, really, why did I do that? But when I went to university, I couldn't afford my car insurance in the first year, and I had to sell my guitar and my amp to be able to keep the car. It was one of those trade-offs. And I look back now and go, you know what? you know, you got your whole life to buy a car and run a car, and you know,
that's a straight off trade between like practicality and just like your dreams. It's like selling,
you know what?
Selling your soul.
I know. I was probably Captain Sensible when I was younger. I'm reverting now. I think I'm going backwards. I wish I'd taken more risks. I wish I'd started my own business. I wish I'd gone to a more exciting university. You know, I wish I'd just done something more creative. Do you know what I mean? But when, I don't know, for me anyway, when I was kind of maybe 17, 18, I went to the university that I thought had the best career prospects, and I wanted to have a car to allow me, you know, mobility and to get to job interviews. You know, I was really thinking practically. And now, of course, you know, roll on 25 years later, I'm going, geez, man, sod all that. I should have just been literally living it up for, like, you know.
Which uni did you go to?
Well, I went to Brunel, which is in West London, sort of outskirts, fairly sort of near Heathrow. And I mean, again, this is showing how sad I was at the time. But I actually went to the library and got a list of the employability statistics by university. So I actually went through and went, which university has got the highest percentage of graduate employment? Now, you'd think it would be all the posh universities, right? You know, all the Oxford and Cambridge and stuff like that. But the reason Brunel was number one was because at the time, I don't think they do this now, but at the time you could only go if you were also going to spend a year out working as part of the course. So they had this ethos of, we want people to graduate having practical experience of work and life as well as the academic. And that really appealed to me, because actually I wasn't going to go to university. I was going to become a pilot. That was my plan B. And then, but for some reason, I think I got some bad advice where they, I was told you had to do physics at A level if you want to be a pilot, which I don't think is true, but I hated physics. And so for me, doing physics wasn't worth the cost, wasn't worth it, to become a pilot. So, anyway, so I ended up, I thought, Captain Sensible, I thought I better go to university and study something semi-serious. So I looked up, so I did economics and business finance, because I thought that's a real subject, learn how to, learn how to run a business or whatever. And I'll go to the one that's got the most graduate employment. So that was the cunning plan.
What was the university like then? Like, did you, I take it you had to, you didn't like move away and live like round there type of thing, or did you just like stay in Hampshire? Or?
No, I did move. It was just a little bit too far to commute to. But actually, if I'm honest with you, 17-year-old lad, 18-year-old lad, whatever, desperate to have independence and to kind of do my own thing. So so I signed up for the halls of residence that kind of come with university. And here's a classic learning: don't take the brochure, right? Because don't ignore what the brochure is. They had this at the time, these brand new plush apartments, right? Ensuite, lovely bedrooms, beautiful kind of dining rooms, the whole thing, and they look absolutely stunning. Anyway, they were oversubscribed, so when I arrived, they said, "I'm really sorry, but we haven't got any more room at the apartments." So I got this this kind of shared housing thing, which is basically about 40 years old in these prefabricated, in kind of really rough part of town. And it was like, it was built like 30 years ago as the overflow for the university, just in case they needed it. And they'd grown so fast that they ended up kind of using it 30 years after it should have been bulldozed.
Yeah, I done something like similar, but when I went to university, I went to Newcastle, and basically the only halls of residence that I could afford was like the cheapest option, essentially. Like, and I ended up going to this halls of residence in Newcastle called St Mary's College, in a place in Fenham, which I think was like an old teaching college or something that they'd renovated into apartments. What I didn't realize at the time is that there's some like medieval law in this part of Newcastle and Fenham, because it was used to be owned by this family who were like devout, basically teetotal, like they hate alcohol essentially. And there's this like medieval law that states that there's no pubs that are allowed to be built in Fenham. So I went to halls of residence where there was no alcohol, like in Newcastle, and that probably the only place in the northeast that there's just like,
I was gonna say,
there's no pubs. So
Wow.
obviously spent no time there at all.
Get me out of there.
Yeah, that was like one of the things. Yeah, like never trust the
Yeah.
the
Never trust
brochure.
the brochure.
I just went on price and I didn't think about anything else, and
Me
just thought,
too.
oh, that's a cheap one, and then I didn't actually realize that.
Do you know what? I think if I had my time again, I'd work back from how good's the social scene? How many clubs are there to go and play sport? You know,
Yeah,
what's the entertainment like? How good's the accommodation in reality? You know, you'd kind
yeah,
of work back from that, you know.
yeah, absolutely, yeah. So so what was it like then? Like being, did you enjoy your time at university?
Do you know what? I had a really mixed time, and rather weirdly, because the way they set the thing up, it was like you did a year at uni, and then you did 6 months working doing one placement. You come back for a year, do 6 months, then you do another year again.
Right.
And but everyone was on different kind of paths, right? So they mixed up the subjects, and some people did a whole year out and not the 6 months. So what it meant was it was really weird. It was like every time I spent the year there, I basically started again and had to make new friends, and there were different people on my course. So I didn't have that experience at university where I had the same set of mates all the way through. What it felt like I was kind of doing a year of getting to know people, getting in with everyone, and then suddenly, and now I'm leaving again. So I don't think I had the best kind of, you know, social experience at university from that point of view. What I loved though, what I absolutely really loved, is the time out working. I think I aced it in terms of my work experience. So the first 6 months I ended up working for an accountancy firm called Coopers and Lybrand. I think it's now called PricewaterhouseCoopers, but that's what it's called back then. And it was amazing. So I got paid, well, I say I got paid really well. It was equivalent to 14 grand a year, which back then was like, you know, proper salary. And I remember the first paycheck I got. So my student grant was £1,300 a term back in the day. My first paycheck for my first month was 1,300 quid. And I literally was like, what do I do with this money? I mean, I was used to living off 50 quid a week, you know, and then it's like, oh, wow. So I went out and bought a car. So having like, you know, I should have bought a guitar actually. Anyway, having sold my guitars, paid my insurance, I upgraded to a Volkswagen Scirocco. Now, Volkswagen Scirocco's back in the day were just like ultimate iconic, you know, kind of
I remember
cars.
Yeah, I remember.
So I had that. So I bought that, I think, after the first month. Worked for 6 months. Had a really amazing experience. I mean, got to go out on client jobs. Got to even got to advise people. So I was in the tax department, and so what I had to do is, it doesn't sound very exciting actually. It was better than it sounds, but I was doing the personal tax bit for high net worth individuals, right? So these were people that earned, you know, £250,000, £500,000, £1 million a year, which back then, of course, was, you know, even more than it is today. And then my role was working out how to minimize the amount of tax they paid. And there was this one guy I remember, and in fact, this is why I got into marketing, which is a bit odd way of kind of joining the dots here. But there's this guy that I'd worked out that he, because there's a rule that says if you spend more than 180 days in a year outside the UK, you're no longer taxed here because you're more abroad than you are here. Anyway, this guy was on 178 days. And I was thinking he was going to save 12 grand if he just left the country for 2 days and came back. So I kept on phoning him, and he wouldn't answer. And the deadline was coming up for when he had to make the trip. Eventually, with about a week to go, I got hold of him. I said, listen, I've got a really important advice for you. I said, get out of the country for 2 days, take your wife on a weekend, and I'll save you £12,000. And he was literally over the moon. And he came back to visit me when he came back for his weekend, just to say thank you. And we're sat around the table and we were chatting away. And he said, oh, thank you so much. I can't tell you how much, because he was also coming in to sign his tax return. And I had a little bit of an epiphany, which was, I sat there going, I'm on the wrong side of the table. I'm like, I don't want to be doing like tax for other people. I want to be. So I said, if you don't mind me asking, what job do you do? And it turns out he worked for a company called Dun & Bradstreet, which is does lots of, if it's a market research company, a very, very big one. But he was in marketing there. And that was his job, basically marketing for that company. And that was sort of one of those points where I thought, yeah, maybe my finance degree wasn't the best plan after all. I'll be fair for sort of doing the tax for wealthy people. I thought I need to be on the other side of the table, and then they could do my tax, you know. But that was my first, maybe I should do marketing conversation. But anyway, back to your conversation. So 6 months at Coopers and Lybrand, had a wonderful time. And then went back to university. And then we had to arrange my next 6 months. Now, the way the university did it is you pretty much had to do a lot of the legwork yourself and find a job. So, you'd have to reach out to companies and try and pull in favors. And so they sometimes advertised jobs, but they were very competitive. I mean, the Coopers and Lybrand one was actually one that had been advertised, but most of them weren't. And I was running out of time. And there were like 2 or 3 weeks left until I was due to start the placement. So I was starting to get more and more stressed. And I saw an advert at the university campus asking for interview guinea pigs. And it was this big posh kind of investment bank called Kleinwort Benson in the city of London. And they basically were going to pay £30 for somebody to come in and pretend to do a job interview. And the reason they were doing it is they were training their managers on interview technique. So I thought, well, look, I've got nothing to do. I could do with polishing the interview technique anyway, because I'm going to have to get a work placement. Anyway, so I get on the train, go down there and queue up and do the interview, and seemed to go very well. And thought, great, got the little check at the end of the day, went off. Anyway, they called me back and they said, John, would you be up for another interview? I said, yeah, of course. No, that'd be absolutely fine. So I went back down, did the interview again. And you know what it's like when you're not doing something for real, you tend to exaggerate a bit. So, because obviously it was role play, or I thought it was role play. So when they said, give me an example of when you've come up with a new business idea. So of course I massively exaggerated it, didn't I? Say, well, I'm glad you asked this because I've got this business on the side and it's turning over this and I employ these people and I do all this. Because I thought, look, I'm pretending, right? And this is the whole idea. Yeah. So I thought this is the game we're playing. And they were really interested. And they were like, I thought, geez, this guy's pretty good, because he really drilled into it and he was really kind of quizzing me quite hard. And I was having to kind of keep up with him a bit. And I'm thinking, geez, they're not messing around here. They're properly going for it. Anyway, so I finished the second interview thinking, geez, this is a bit of a workout. It's not quite turn up and have a chat, is it? Anyway, and then the HR assistant she turned around to me and said, so do you think you'll take the job? And I was thinking, are we still in role play, or is there some confusion? And in my head, I was thinking, this could be the role play continue, but the senior manager's left the meeting. We've ended the interview. So I was assuming, like, you give me the money again. This is the point you give me the cash, and I go, and like my work here.
So what happened there then?
I turned up for interview for an actual job. It was a real job. I didn't.
How did they mess that up?
I don't know. I think they must have.
Maybe in the name Jon Evans, quite a common name.
Well, maybe that has happened before as well, actually. Yes. So they must have. I don't quite know how it happened, but I obviously ended up in an actual job interview. And it was for. I mean, fortunately, it was a junior job. At least I wasn't applying for an important job. But it was basically to. It was to be it was like an analyst job. So, they basically sell lots of stocks and shares. Mm-hmm. So you had all the kind of traders on the trading floor. And basically my job was to get in at 7:30 in the morning and work out how much money each of the trading teams had made or lost on the previous day. And I had to run around the higher echelons of the company and drop all these reports off. And then they would come back and say, John, can you look at the foreign exchange team and tell us, how the foreign exchange team are doing? So I'd basically write reports on the different trading teams and how they got on. And actually,
you took the job then?
I took the job, yeah. Because what happened was
some poor Jon Evans who's gone, who's applied, who's so. He's on the so qualified for that role, and he's probably gone to the first interview and smashed it, and then they've called you up, and then you've gone back to a different manager, and they've just not connected the dots. You've gotten the job, and the guy sat there, he's probably still waiting for the phone call now.
Do you know what? Actually, you've reminded me of something, right? Because a bit after I started there, because I said I was available straight away. I think I started the following week. A few weeks in, I sat down with a different HR person. She said, I'm a bit confused because we only hire from 4 universities and Brunel's not one of the universities we hire from. And she was really confused going, this is odd. You sure you went to Brunel? We don't hire from Brunel as a university. Because I think they had Oxford, Cambridge, Edinburgh, something, the usual sort of thing. And she was really confused about how I got the job. I didn't say anything, of course.
I was actually being paid to be in the interview.
Yeah, but I had a horribly awkward situation where I'm going, is this real? Is this not? I don't want to, because if I confess that I'm only here for the money, then I might not get the job. But, you know, so I had that real dilemma. So I just ran with it and just pretended it was a full-time job. And then they actually sent the contract through, you know, so.
Unbelievable. Just shows you from a recruiter's perspective, you should always double check someone's ID.
Yeah. There you go.
Amazing. So you were obviously still at uni when that was happening. And whereabouts were you in uni? Because obviously they think you've got you for a full-time job, but you're still at university then. So what happened there?
No, exactly. So I did that for 6 months, then left, and then went back to university after 6 months. I had a real dilemma actually, because I really wanted to stay. And in fact, the dilemma was this, right? I was earning ridiculous money for my age. I mean, £20,000, which sounds like not a lot now, but back then it was like the best graduates, you know, in the world would have got 20 grand a year. Yeah. And, you know, for someone with no responsibilities like me, that was all spending money, you know. So I basically started buying suits and upgrading my car and, you know, living the life really. It was wicked. And do you know what? I would have probably stayed, but I think by that point I decided I wanted to do marketing, not finance. And the other thing I learned as well, being in the city and being on the trading floor with the guys, is although it was exhilarating, I loved the rush of it. I mean, I got up at 5:30. You know, I was in the office by 7:30. It was a complete buzz the whole day. I had no social life because I was asleep by 9 in the evening. I worked 12 hours a day, big commute on top. That it wasn't that it was pressured, but what I realized is it was dog eat dog. And there was no team. There was no sense of fun. It was basically, right, this has to happen now. It's all about the money. And there was no creativity in it. And basically every day started becoming the same. Every day I'd be up early again.
A lot of big egos, you know, on that trading floor as well. You know, like chest
massive
type.
And do you know what really shocked me as well? They're all in debt and divorced. I mean, this is what I learned from them is, you know, some of them would be earning. I mean, in fact, one of my jobs was to work out their commission. So I used to do the report. How much money have you made? What's your commission? So, I mean, I think the best one, a guy called Flash, was earning £250,000 a month on commission. And I was thinking, I mean, can you imagine, you know, 20-year-old me earning 20 grand, who I thought I was doing well. And then I go flip and, you know, look at this guy. But he got sacked after 3 months. Because he was earning it, and then he lost £6 million in a day. And one of the senior directors said to me, John, can you just do a little report for me on Flash's performance in foreign exchange or whatever? So I did the report, dropped him off at 9 o'clock, and then at 10 o'clock he's being walked out by security. And at this point, I felt like I had a target on my back, thinking, "Oh, geez, the next time they see me walking around, they're going to be going, I know what this lad's up to, you know, sort of thing." So maybe my time is running out, but I learned so much, as you always do in these things, but I did realize these people aren't my people. If it sounds a bit silly to say that, but I didn't feel a connection with the people. And I didn't want every day to be about money. And I didn't want every day to be the same kind of chase for money and living on the edge all the time about, am I going to get fired? Am I going to, you know, see tomorrow and that kind of thing. So I then weirdly decided, let's do marketing. With absolutely zero marketing experience and a degree in finance.
Amazing. So what was your first step in doing that then? So you make a decision, you want to go into marketing. What's your the first move when you?
Well, I had this really weird. I did this. Well, I think it was about 9 months in the end with the summer holidays at Kleinmore Benson. You know, brilliant time. Went back to university and then decided the only jobs I'd apply for would be marketing jobs. Which is a really hard position to be in, to be honest with you, because I'd got probably the best finance training a 20-year-old could ever want. You know, Coopers and Lybrand, I did tax, I did audit, and I did investment banking. And back then, you know, being in London, investment banking was like the cream of the experience. I mean, to get into an investment bank at that kind of age or whatever is just superstar, you know, kind of experience. So it's really weird then to go, I want to apply for a job that pays half the amount and I haven't got the experience for. So that was a bit weird. So I only applied for 3 jobs in my final year. One was at Mercedes-Benz, one was at Renault, and I think the other one might have been at Ford. Because I love cars, as you can tell from the you know, the Scirocco. So I love cars and I want to be in marketing. And so stupid me goes, yes, car marketing. this is going to be it. And there's a very weird story. I'll go on a very short detour in a second, because there's a weird bit of karma that happens with this. So I apply for Ford, don't even get an interview. I apply for Renault. I end up in the assessment center. Sometimes they do these big assessment centers. You go away for 3 days, you role play. And there were 5 jobs, and I'm literally the 6th choice. And I don't speak fluent French. And that was the difference. So I didn't get the Renault job. I applied for Mercedes-Benz, and I thought I played a blinder. So Mercedes-Benz had a big advertising campaign going on. I went and recreated the advertising campaign precisely, but changed the car to me. So as I was writing up about what was meant to be the car in the ad, I was writing about myself, and I sent it into Mercedes-Benz thinking that surely this is how you get a job at Mercedes, right?
Yeah.
And I just got the stock letter that said, "Thank you for your interest in applying. We have put your CV on file, and we'll get back to you if it's of interest." And having put so much creativity into it, I was just gutted. I heard nothing. Yeah. But I tell you the karma, right? And this is a bit of a detail. We'll get back to what we're talking about. 20 years later, I ended up being employed by Ashridge Business School to run a module on their Daimler-Benz senior managers program. So basically, the owners of Mercedes, Daimler-Benz, send their top 20 managers from across the planet on this week-long training course. And one of the modules in that training course is the one that I did, which was how to innovate in a large organization. Because one of the problems they've got, as you imagine, with such a big organization, is how do you remain nimble and agile? And basically, I taught that course for about 4 or 5 years, or that particular thing. And of course, as you do, you're sat down there, and everyone around the table introduces themselves. And so we go around and go, they'll be like, "Hi, I run the AMG division, and I've got 10,000 in my team." And the next guy goes, "Yeah, and I run the truck division. We've got 700,000 working for me, and I'm kind of feeling well out of my depth." Anyway, it then gets this guy, I think he was called Gary. He said, "Yeah. I run Mercedes-Benz UK, and I'm also the HR director." And I'm like, "Oh." I said, "Gary, how long have you been HR director for?" And he goes back, "Oh, yeah. I started there in 1995 or something." I said, I don't suppose you remember an application from this young lad to you in about 1999. And he was the HR director that wrote the letter back to me to say no.
Amazing. Did he remember it?
No, not at all.
No.
He probably didn't even sign the letter, did he? But we worked out that it would have been him that sent the letter, but he wouldn't have known about it. He probably never got through the junior ranks that were kind of filtering these things out,
My sister-in-law is actually one of the top European marketing people at Tesla. I should have mentioned that to you.
That's a big job. Wow.
Yeah. She's the European marketing manager for Tesla. She might be good on your podcast, to be fair.
I was going to say, let's set this up.
Yeah.
Wow.
So just when you were talking about car marketing, she used to work for McLaren.
Wow. What a brand, right? That must be awesome.
Yeah, awesome. I don't get cars at all, by the way. So when I feel like I should have more of an interest in it. But like,
it's an expensive hobby. That's all I can say.
Never been something that I've ever understood to a level. Like I'd be like the guy in the pub, and all my mates would be talking about like V6 and V12 and all that sort of stuff, and I'm just like, I'll go to the bar.
Well, I've had to swap cars for bicycles, because I got to a point in my life where I thought, do you know what, I need to get fit, so I'll get a bicycle, and I can't afford to buy the best car, but I can probably afford to buy the best bike, and still not, ruin my income.
Amazing. So going back to first little bit of time in marketing. Talk us through, like the first couple of years.
Well, listen. So I'll tell you my challenge was this, right? How does a guy with experience from investment banking, accountancy, with an economics and finance degree get into marketing? And so I was
going to say, like, because your CV would have been like different, as opposed to
I know, completely alien as well to kind of, someone who wants to get into marketing. So I left university, didn't have a job, spent the summer kind of traveling, doing kids camp, stuff like this. And this is where one of the stories in your intro comes in, because I broke my neck that summer when I left university. I was out, I was doing this kind of kids summer holiday camp. And basically we had this big assault course, and it was kind of the age range of kids, I think, was probably 11 to 6, about secondary school age, sort of 11 to 16. And I had the youngest ones in my dorm, as it were. And we had this big inter-dorm competition on this obstacle course. And overnight, this obstacle course had got wet. And so the 11-year-old lads I had in my team were like a bit nervous about doing the assault course. And I remember saying, lads, listen, it's fine. This isn't that hard. I mean, come on. How hard can this be? And they said, oh, will you go first then? Because we're in these teams competing and it's all timed. I said, yeah. Let me show you how to do it. You can imagine what happens next. So I'm jumping. I jump onto this assault course. Literally, no word of a lie. The moment I get on it, I slip like in a classic banana skin style, but because what had happened is overnight, everything had got wet because of the dew. And I basically, I flip off this thing and I land on my head. And basically break my neck right at the top. But the tragedy is, or not the tragedy, or the thing is that we have a doctor on site, which is great, but everyone goes, oh, it's his back. So no one thinks it's my neck. So they're basically going, oh, it's his back. Let's carry him inside and you can rest up a bit and see how it goes. So I went in and they said, oh, it'll probably be stiff for a while. Take some aspirin, whatever. And it was only somebody came in. I can't remember who it was. I think one of the girls on camp, and she said, do you know what? I think you should go to hospital just to be sure. I'd hate it to be anything. It's probably fine, but let's just take you to be sure. Right. So we tried. Now the hospital's about half hour away down in Poole. So we're whizzing down these back country lanes. We get to the hospital, and the hospital's super busy. So the triage nurse, sees me and goes, and they say to her, oh, his lower back. You might have hurt his lower back. So they're like, it's probably fine, but go and sit over there. We'll get to you in a second. I wait there 4 hours in A&E, like literally, but by this point, the whole of my neck and my back has frozen. I can't move my upper body. I'm literally going on like this. And anyway, so while I'm there, the blue lights come in, there's an ambulance. They rush this guy in with a suspected broken neck. So, they literally go straight through, get it x-rayed. Now, what's weird is, so they're x-raying him, and then I get through for my x-ray at about the same time, and we're sitting in adjacent rooms. And then there's this like little group of trainee nurses and doctors who are going around following the consultant, kind of like writing notes and listening in. Anyway, he said, I can hear what they're saying. They go, suspected broken neck, guy coming on an ambulance. We just had his x-ray. The good news is he's fine. Right. And they go in and they say to, it's okay. You've not broken your neck. This is just muscle and everything else. Anyway, they then dismiss the trainee doctors and nurses. And then my results come in. And then basically what happens is I hear this, whoa, get them back, quickly get them back. And I'm like, what's going on? Anyway, no word of a lie. It's the weirdest moment probably my entire life. The consultant walks in and he looks at me, looks at his notes, and he walks back out again. And he says to the nurse, is that Mr. Evans in there? And she goes, yeah. And he looks in and he shakes his head at me and he goes, you should not be conscious. And I'm like, what do you mean? He said, I've never seen, he said, I've been doing this 15 years. I've only twice ever seen anyone survive what you've just done, but certainly not still be conscious at this point. And because I'm lying, but and then what they do, the nurses come in, they put these sandbags by my neck,
start taking photos of you and stuff. And like, this guy's surviving.
It's like I'm suddenly as a subject of a live case study, and because they're all literally there's a whole group of them kind of making notes and looking all interested. I'm thinking, you worried about me, or you just want to make sure you kind of, and basically. So what I'd done is I split my vertebrae in half. But the thing that saved me was because I didn't turn my head, it hadn't severed my spinal cord. So my spinal cord was still in position, but the bones were separated. Right. So they had a decision to make. Do they fuse it to, do they literally bolt it together, or do they let it heal naturally? So I was under observation for a couple of weeks while they just made sure that as the bones started to fuse, they weren't going to do any damage. So I spent 6 weeks literally lying flat on my back with a broken neck. Fortunately, got through it. So I left university, no job, broken neck. That was not a particularly good start. So anyway, of course, I had to get into marketing after all this. Yeah. So I basically asked around and said, does anyone know any marketing jobs? And this IT consultant that was basically a mate of mine's dad was doing a project for Britvic in Chelmsford, Britvic soft drinks. And I just said, put in a good word for me. So he said, give me your CV and I'll drop it on the desk and this sort of thing. And this is I'm going to sound so old now, right? This is going to make me sound really, really old. But they got my CV and they said, "Oh, sounds like he can use a computer." And like, anyway, this sounds like really silly, but
this guy's got PC on his.
I know,
on his CV,
exactly,
yeah.
right. So what had happened at Britvic at the time? They just started buying market data about their market share and this sort of thing, and they started this kind of new thing called category management, which is basically they'd go and give advice to their customers about how to grow sales and doing different things. And they needed someone to analyze the data and create reports and then create charts and that kind of thing. So basically, I ended up getting a job at Britvic as a data analyst. So what was nice is I was using all my finance and technical skills that I'd learned at university, but I was in a marketing department. Although I was the geek, I was the kind of data geek that they all kind of, the sales director would come along and he would literally draw his presentation in a bit of paper with a bit of pen. John, I'm going to see Booker tomorrow. Could you just do me some charts that look a bit like this? And I'll be there on my very crude version of PowerPoint as it was back then, doing the charts for him. So I basically ended up becoming Britvic's only data guy that could manage all this data. So that was my first. It wasn't really marketing, but it was my route into a company. And then from there, I basically just kind of edged my way towards the marketing department, trying to get a bit more experience and just lap it up as I went. Really
amazing. So you started in quite obviously a very technical part, or like an analytical part of like marketing. So how did you go from that and progress through
well, actually, I actually had to leave. It was a bit bizarre story, this one, but my dream job came up. So I'd spent maybe 3 years in the sort of sales and customer marketing part of the company. So I was doing marketing in the salesy sense, as in doing all the launch support for new products and stuff like that. And my dream job came up, which was for brand manager on Pepsi Max. Now, Pepsi Max, particularly back then, was a really cool brand. It was a bit like kind of Mountain Dew is in the US. They sponsored skate competitions and festivals.
Yeah, they were I remember
extreme sports.
They were everywhere. They were everywhere.
It was like Red Bull. It was kind of like Red Bull before Red Bull was Red Bull. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was proper cool.
All over TV, I remember.
Yeah. It was definitely,
because it was the first thing. It was the first time anything like that had really come out, wasn't it? Like sort of like sugar free and still tasted like Pepsi,
but it had the attitude, didn't it? It wasn't like boring, Diet Coke, which was like the window cleaner and the guy and the girls watching him out the window. It was like
that was it. Diet Coke break. I remember.
And then for the lads, Pepsi Max, twice the sugar, half the sugar, twice the taste, or whatever it was. It had proper assets. I thought, man, I am literally the target audience. I love it. This is literally my big break. And it was me and one other, and unfortunately I didn't get it. And I'll never forget the feedback, because the feedback was I was too analytical and I wasn't creative enough. And I remember that's the feedback they gave me. They said, we can see how you might be very good at the commercial bit of the job. We're not convinced you're creative enough. And it's quite funny, because actually, as I've gone on in my career, most people would probably describe me as very creative. But I just hadn't had the chance to prove it back then. So it was, and you know what you like when you're young, you're just so impulsive. And I wasn't prepared to wait for the next job to come up. I was just like, right, if you're not having me, I'm off, phone up the recruiter. Right. I want my first brand manager's job, help, And I ended up kind of, so I left Britvic for 3 years, went to work for a wine and spirit distribution company, which might bring me onto my list actually in a second, but went to do that. And weirdly got headhunted by Britvic to go back again, but I went back at 3 levels higher than where I'd left. So I ended up becoming more senior than the person that had got my job that I'd lost out to all those time ago. So it's funny, isn't it?
How stuff like that happens in every industry, where you're like, you spend years at a company, especially a large company, spend a little bit of time away, add, a couple of bits of skill for not that much, a huge amount of time. And then you go back at a much more senior position and much higher salary and totally reinvented.
Well, I'll tell you one thing I learned about this little company is called First Drinks, and they were probably the 5th or 6th biggest drinks, wine and spirit kind of company. You had Diageo and Pernod Ricard, all the big ones. It was 100 million turnover, so it was not small. But what was lovely about it, and I got great fond memories of it, was that you got so much more responsibility. because it was smaller, although the brands weren't as high profile, so I think I managed like Stolichnaya vodka or Di Serrano Amaretto and brands like this. They were niche, and they're worth a few million, but they weren't the kind of Baileys or Heineken or whatever the big brands. And but you got all the responsibility. So basically, what it was great at that point in your career, because you basically get to do a bit of everything. Creative, media planning, trade marketing, innovation, brand management. So you get to do it all. And actually, I actually think I probably learned more in terms of brand management in that time than I did at Britvic before then.
Yeah, because it's like the smaller companies, more touch points and less siloed, I suppose, than the bigger companies.
But I think people forget, because people see working for a smaller company as not as glamorous and not as good on your CV. But sometimes, if you're prepared to take the supposed step down, actually what you can learn, you can accelerate your learning far quicker, and then come back in a bigger position.
Big time, yeah. So you mentioned Stolichnaya there. Talk to me about Stolichnaya.
Do I need to tick off the KGB
one
off the list then? Yeah. So we can rule out the KGB one is, well, okay, artistic license on this one, but it is possibly true. So this is one of those stories that I look back at and go, oh, did that really happen? It's just unbelievable kind of thing. But
we've actually already had a KGB story on the Humans of Creative podcast, which is your sister.
There you go.
Podcast, and one of our clients actually in Australia, Kath Blackman, her dad. Sorry, she'll kill me for saying that. Kath Blackham. What her dad used to work for the Australian department for like the overseas department basically, and he took her on a visit to Moscow because they had actually requested that, like, they knew that he had a daughter and she was 13 at the time. Like, I would just like recommend you bring your daughter basically. Wow. So he took his daughter to Moscow, and they went into this restaurant, and she said it was a really busy restaurant, and walked in, and basically as soon as they walked in, everyone in the middle of the food just put their knives and forks down and left the restaurant. They just walked out, and she found out afterwards that the guy that they were having lunch with was a KGB agent, basically.
Oh no!
Can you imagine just being like, you're walking into a restaurant at like 13, and like everyone just gets up and just leaves because they know who you're here to meet or whatever. So, phenomenal.
That's scary stuff. And with your 13-year-old daughter, I've got a 13-year-old daughter. I would hate to be in that situation.
Yeah. Imagine even taking your daughter to meet a KGB agent at 13.
Yeah, crikey.
13.
Made of tough stuff though. Wow.
Yeah. Amazing.
So I'll tell you what happened. It was a very bizarre scenario. But Stolichnaya, the little bit of background to it was a Russian-owned vodka brand. It was like the national vodka of Russia for many, many years. And in the late 80s, Putin, this is very early, it must have been early days of Putin, just after Gorbachev, but they sold off a lot of Russian assets to raise money. And Stolichnaya was sold for $250,000, which is absolutely nothing. But they sold the rights incredibly cheaply. I mean, imagine there must have been bribes taking place and all sorts of things going on that you wouldn't want to know about. But anyway, fast forward to 2002, whenever it is I'm managing it. And so I'm the UK distributor for Stolichnaya, and we've got a lovely little business. It's got a great reputation in the UK, and we were stocked in the high-end bars and, in the sort of, in Waitrose and some really nice places. So it's a lovely little job. And then something happened, literally, the Russian government decided to renationalize the brand. So the vodka was made in Russia, but they sent armed guards to the port in Kaliningrad to basically stop any export of Stoli around the world. So the global supply dried up in like a day. So we had about 3 weeks stock in our warehouse. It got sold out in less than a day.
Yeah.
So suddenly, as the brand manager, I've just arrived. I'm the brand manager. Suddenly, I don't have anything to sell. It's a bit of a problem. And of course, I'm talking to the company that are being taken over by the government, and they don't know anything. They're like, we don't know. We're going to have to try and make our own distillery in Latvia. That's what they said to us. We don't know how long it'll take. It could take us years. Who knows? So I just didn't know when I was going to get the vodka back. Anyway, I did something very stupid, right, and very naive. I got a phone call from a journalist, right? And I answered the phone, and I hadn't had media training. I hadn't been given any particular advice, but I got chatting to this guy, and he started very innocently. Oh, how's it going? What's your perspective and what's going on? And I just chit chat away for about 45 minutes. Didn't think anything of it, right?
Yeah.
And then around this time, it's when my mum passed away. Actually, was at the same time. And we decided to spread our ashes in Swaziland, where we lived when I was little, and it was her favorite place on earth. And so we kind of wanted to go back, and it's where her and my dad lived for the first few years when they're married. And so we decided to go back, and we're on safari in the Kruger Park. And I walk down to reception, and I'm a little bit earlier than everyone else. And I see Time magazine, and I know which copy it is because it was the Queen Mother had recently died, and it was the Queen Mother's memorial edition of Time magazine. And I'm sat there flicking through Time magazine, and I get the shock of my life because there's a double-page article about the whole Stolichnaya situation, right? And in the article, the source of all the information is me. And I'm like, oh my, what have I done? But as I read the story, it then goes on to explain that the KGB had actually assassinated the guy that headed up the vodka association in Russia that had done this deal. Basically, he had been assassinated, and it talked about all the stuff going on. And I'm basically quoted through the entire article as the source, and I'm like, oh no, what have I done?
You're on a list.
Yeah. So whether I made the list or not, I don't know, but
amazing.
I can't bother them too much.
I don't think you would. You'd live very long if you were on an actual KGB list. Can you imagine? They don't mess around.
They don't mess around, do they? As we know, yeah.
Amazing. Okay, so what happened with that in the end? Then did that job fizzle out because of that, or what was the?
Well, it's sort of I was a bit lucky because it took about, I think it was about 9 months until we got the stock back. So what the company did in the end was they made a distillery in Latvia that was literally just over the border from Russia. So I think they got the actual vodka piped through, so they could still call it Russian, and then they bottled it in Latvia and sold it. And I mean, I can't imagine the trademark battles because it literally looked identical to Stolichnaya in Russia, but it just had bottled in Latvia, written in small writing you could hardly see. So I don't know what happened, but eventually they got it back. But fortunately, and this might tick off one of my other lists on the list, was I was also managing Disaronno Amaretto, the kind of almond liqueur that you kind of get at Christmas. So I was managing that, which was great fun. And I had a big budget, loved working with the Italians. The Italians were so much fun to work with, real family business. Did some exciting stuff, but I managed to get myself into trouble. In fact, it was the same year as the Stolly trouble, but that was in the spring. And by Christmas, I was on Have I Got News for You, which is the other one on that list. Which that was quite a year, I tell you.
Amazing. What happened with the Amaretto one?
Well, it's do you know what? This is probably a lesson in timing, right? Because again, being a young gun, I wanted to make a mark and do something. And again, going back to working for a small company, you get a lot of freedom compared to a big company. So you get to make mistakes, basically. You get to learn. And I was convinced that the smell of Amaretto it's a bit, when you go into a bakery store or a supermarket and you smell the bread, you just want it, don't you? And I thought, Amaretto has got that almondy smell that's unlike anything else. And the idea came to me when I was I was in the tube in London, and you know how you get these blasts of air that come through when the tubes come in and out. And I thought, wouldn't it be cool if I had little scent emitters at the bottom of the stairs, so that every time it blast came through, you get this smell of almonds. kind of wafting up a bit like the bakery. And I thought, so what I was planning on doing, it took me 6 months to do this. Actually, I was working with the Underground, and I bought up all the advertising slots on all the escalators in the 4 biggest stations. Right. So that every ad as you go down the travelator or go down the escalator is Di. I'd taken the archways above at the top, and then I'd got 50,000 mini bottles in these little gift bags, and basically I was going to give them away to people as they come out. So the idea being, you'd be on your commute, you go up the escalator, you go, what's that smell? That's lovely almond smell. You'd look around and you see my advertising, and then at the top of the escalator you get handed your little present. And do you know, in all honesty, hand on my heart, the London Underground loved it, because basically they saw it as firstly they thought as a nice thing to do at Christmas, you know, because it was in the run up to Christmas we were doing this. And the second thing is they thought that they actually did all of that for free for me, because they wanted to trial it as an idea, because they said they could sell it to fragrance companies, aftershaves, deodorants, that kind of thing. So they thought this is a really cool potential marketing thing. Now, this is where the timing comes in, right? Because we are about to go to war with Iraq. This is when, if you remember, Saddam Hussein has got weapons of mass destruction, or hasn't. We know Tony Blair's in charge, and there was a Home Office bit of advice.
This is the first Gulf War, isn't it?
This is in the build up, right? So basically what's happening is you've got George Bush who wants to have a fight with Saddam. They say he's building nuclear weapons or chemical weapons. They never get found, but it's an excuse to go to war, basically, right? And this is in 2002. So war is coming, and basically the Home Office publishes some advice for citizens, and it's quite weird, this, right? But they basically publish some advice that says the most likely terrorist attack on British soil would be a cyanide attack in the underground, and the way you can tell a cyanide attack is the smell of almonds. And that was published on the morning in national newspapers as I start pumping the smell of almonds around the underground. And now I didn't know this, right? So I'm on a trade show. I'm out doing some Christmas trade fair or something. And then I pick my phone up at the lunch break, and I literally, no word of a lie, got 12 messages. And it's, hi, I'm so-and-so from the Daily Mail. Hi, this is so-and-so from the Mirror. Hi, it's so-and-so from the Times. And all these journalists are asking me for a comment. And now we got a PR agency, and they end up handling all this for me. And I put some comment out there, but I had to cancel the campaign. Or cancel that bit of the campaign, and it basically made the news everywhere. Even in Italy, it made headline news in Italy. I mean, the owner of the company, I got an absolute, as you imagine, absolute roasting for all this. But it ended up on Have I Got News for You on that weekend, because they used to do this thing like, what's the story behind this? And they show a picture of the bottle, they show the underground, they show a gas mask, and then there's me. It's like, I'm the story. It's like, oh my days, But it just go, in a way, maybe it's good it's before the internet, because like, I was everywhere in print. So the Independent wrote an article about what happens when marketing goes wrong, and I'm literally the case study. The Sunday Times, I've still got this actually hanging in my toilet, but as it happens. But the Sunday Times, I'm quote of the week next to Tony Blair and JFK, because they have these, they kind of have these verbatims that they put in there, and I think that it was taken from the press release that we had to put out there, where I'm quoted, I didn't write this, but I'm quoted as saying, obviously the safety of the public is of paramount importance, and that's why we will no longer be running this campaign, or something. And it goes, so says Jon Evans after he caused a security alert in the London Underground, kind of thing. It's like, oh amazing. Dear. So that in fact, this is my early start in brand management. This is where I learnt my craft.
Cut your teeth, timing is everything, basically.
Yeah, totally.
Amazing. So in terms of career, then what happens? What happens after that?
Yeah, well, I tell you what, it's a rather weird thing. Was I actually went back to Britvic. So I spent 3 years down in Southampton working First Drinks. Had a lovely time, made some great friends. Really, really special moment. And then my mentor actually from Britvic, a guy called Alan, who's easily one of the cleverest people I know. He's just absolutely one of those people that can, dissect a problem really clearly and then just tell you the answer. You know what I mean? Just super clear thinker, real brain box. He was the strategy director of Britvic, and he got a sort of development job, which was to set up and run Britvic International. So his remit was take the Britvic brands that we've got in the UK, like Robinsons and Fruit Shoot and J2O and those kinds of brands that became quite well known, and expand them internationally. And he was looking for a marketing manager. So he phoned me up and he said, "Oh, I've heard you've done good things." He obviously hadn't read the press though, because if he'd read the press, he would have realised, not to touch me with a barge pole. Anyway, bless him. He'd obviously not read that. But he phoned me up and he said, "How would you feel about coming back?" And so I love the idea, because again, when you're early in your career, you just want to lap up the experience. And international marketing is something I wanted to do at some point, because I wanted to tick the boxes. I've done sales, I've done brand management, I've done international marketing. So I was really at that stage in my life, I was in a kind of very much a tick box mode. And I was also a massive fan of Alan, and the chance to work for him was too good to miss. So so he hired me back. So I spent again, wonderful years of my career, about 3 years working in Britvic International. And one of the best bosses actually is Clark, who Alan hired to be general manager for the team. And led by Clark, we had this mission to double the size of the business. It was a £15 million business, and we aimed to double it to 30 million in 3 years, and we made it with like a month to spare. And it was one of the kind of proudest journeys I've been on. But my part of the job was just, almost fun. It was kind of like I got to go out to different countries, appoint distributors, appoint ad agencies, and basically launch brands from scratch, which is one of those, wonderful things. I got to make some amazing advertising. Probably the best one actually, which is another weird one, is the most success we had by far was actually the kid. Do you know Fruit Shoot, Robinson's Fruit Shoot, the kind of kids drink. It turns out that in most countries you don't have that kind of thing. They typically have cartons, or they have the Capri Sun sort of drink. So it was still very, very, very innovative as a product idea back then. So I created the global kind of commercials for Fruit Shoot wherever we launched it. And so I had a Dutch agency. We actually made the ad in Colombia as well, which is one of the weirdest situations I've ever been in, because I flew. The idea behind this ad was we had kids on Mars in spacesuits, and they're doing little flips, and one of them has got a kind of Capri Sun which kind of squirts all over their face, and the other one's got Fruit Shoot which perfectly goes into their mouth in slow motion through the visor and so on, exaggerating the point of the sports cap on it. But I got stuck in the US actually, because I was I had to fly via, I think it was Atlanta, to get to Colombia, and I was carrying about $10,000 in cash and I had a spacesuit, a kid's spacesuit, because I had to carry some of the props. And it's one of those things I never thought I'd ever be in this position, but I'm in transit, going through security, and I get pulled off by the border control in the airport into a private interrogation room. And I'm like, there must be some mistake here. Anyway, they sit me down and they go, "What is an Englishman doing flying to Colombia with lots of US dollars and a spacesuit?" And at that moment, I go, "Do you know what? That's a really good question. That does look a bit weird, doesn't it?" And of course, I spent 2.5 hours explaining to them again and again and again. It was legitimate. Eventually, they gave up and said, "All right, you can carry on." But they just didn't believe me. They just thought, I literally did not believe the story at all.
It sounds like you're like a magnet for
disaster.
Wherever you go, John, it's just like trouble seems to find you out. And
do you know what, I'm hoping at some time this podcast will be able to tell you something I've done right. We'll get on to it. We'll get there eventually. But no, but back to your question. Britvic International was just so much fun. And again, a wonderful learning experience, worked with some brilliant people, and really enjoy and learn a lot about launching new brands, growing brands, and what it takes to be successful. I think a lot of my learning, a lot of things I now take away watching, like my boss, Clark, who's, one of my biggest inspirations. Look at him leading a business. He's one of the best salespeople I've worked with, and getting the chance to, properly do some good marketing as well.
What was it about him that you really admired and you took away?
Well, I think the thing with Clark actually is, and we're fantastic mates even to this day, was just how much he believed in people and how, I mean, weird thing actually. So I worked for him for a couple of 3 years or whatever. And when I moved on, because I ended up going to work for the UK part of Britvic, he asked me this question when we went out for a drink, actually, just to, kind of say goodbye, as it were. And he said to me, in your experience working for me, have I ever told you what to do? And I said, no. And he said, good. Well, then I've done well. And I just thought it's a weird thing to say, but I kind of thought he then went on to say, look, I hope that you felt you've been able to fail, you've been able to learn, but I hope you felt at every moment in the last 3 years, I've had your back and I've been your biggest supporter. And I thought that was wonderful, and so I think I learned from him how important it is to feel the support of your boss. And, because some of the people I work with at Britvic were just so political and, they'd turn on you, on a sixpence if you did the wrong thing.
Sounds like he understood the ownership part of
I don't know
being
how to respond to that.
Oh, Siri going off.
Oh, there you go.
Siri, I don't know how to respond to that. It's because I wasn't asking a question to Siri. So yeah, it sounds like he really got the ownership part
he
of
did.
being a good leader, which is to to make sure that the people in your team have got ownership, and they feel like they've got ownership of problems, and they know they feel like their ideas are being listened to and taken forward, as opposed to a dictatorial boss who tells you what to do and tells you to get on with it type thing. That 100%. Doesn't really foster the
he was big on autonomy and support. He was big on culture. I mean, we developed some some very, very clear values actually that we literally had on the wall. I mean, I remember designing the wall in the office to reflect these values, and values are often talked about or written down but not lived by. But actually this is one where we really stuck to it. We had the awards on the values all the time. We talked about drive for results and passion and all those sorts of things. And I look back now and I would take those 5 values we had and replicate them anywhere. They were real truisms. So he was definitely a man of value. And the other thing I'd say about him as well, he was the best salesman I've ever worked with. And just because he understood people and he didn't have to sell, because he developed relationships with people and he got their trust very quickly. And, I could walk into a room with him and he'd already connected someone personally. He'd have found out a mutual contact. He'd have made them laugh. He would have shown that he understood their business. He would have asked, what is it I can do for you? And how can I help you? And he just, that art of selling without even selling. He never said, "Oh, I'm here to sell you fruit shoot," or I want this is look at the price that I'm going to do for you. Look at the great deal we've got coming out. It was none of that. He never needed to do that because he just built relationships super quickly. He got a level of trust and respect with people, and he's got an amazing network and as a result of it. And it's just some people you just absorb their ways of working behavior.
Just a sponge round about them.
I just had to be around and went, oh man, that is good. So I've learned so much. I've carried a lot of those principles and ways of doing things off him.
That's what you just mentioned there about sales is because that's such a craft, that a lot of people don't understand how difficult that is, but how easy those types of people make it look. It's like second nature, when it's a really, really a craft that you're either, I don't know, maybe born with a little bit of, but you can definitely learn more of if you understand what you're looking for.
I think the way I've distilled it in my mind, the pivot for me on this was when I've done, gone on sales training or I've seen other people, what so many salespeople do wrong is that they talk about features and benefits and the close and the proposition, and they've got all these frameworks that basically in their mind they're thinking this is how I should frame what I'm selling. So if I'm selling to you, I'll go, right, Chris, here are 5 reasons why you should be buying my new bit of software, and it does this, it does that, and then they go, so Chris, have we got your commitment, and when can we sign you up, and this sort of thing. And what they'll have done right is they won't have shown any interest in you. And what Clark would do in that situation?
Ask questions. That's the whole thing about the,
exactly.
the sell me this pen type scenario.
Yeah.
What people always stumble on that is like, it's all that is. It's a really extreme version of like a sales tactics. Is instead of giving the whole features and
you
benefits,
don't sell the pen.
Don't sell the pen at all. Just ask questions.
Totally.
And that's like, because I mean, I get it all the time on places like LinkedIn, just because I've got managing director in my job title, and I get people trying to sell me stuff which I've got absolutely, obviously, no need for. Like our whole team is distributed. We all work from home, like all over the world, and I've got people from commercial cleaning companies trying to sell me like like office cleaning.
Dear Chris, as an MD, do you need to have cleaner offices? Well, we can help. We'll come around and clean.
That's exactly it. And they give you the whole sales pitch, and it's like, if you just looked on our website, you would see that
you'd work out that's not needed.
Completely distributed team, and we don't have a central office.
I remember the managing director of Mediacom, the media agency I used when I was at LucasAid. We spent like 50 million quid a year with them or something. I remember she phoned me up and said, "Oh, we've got this new division doing this consultancy. Would you mind, giving her an hour of your time, because we'd like to come and talk to you?" And in my head, I think, okay, look, I trust you, and that's great, and okay, I'll do it. And I can't remember what she was called, but I remember, getting to about 55 minutes of the conversation, and I realized I had not said a thing. What she had done is said, "So we are going to do these 6 different things, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do that." And anyway, at the very, very end, she said, "So what do you think?" And I said, "Well, you've not asked me what I need."
Yeah.
So, I mean, you've not even asked me what my problems are, or what I could, and I just said, I feel like I've lost the last hour, because I could tell you that everything you've just said to me, none of it precisely fits what it is I need at the moment. But if you'd asked me that, you could have quite easily adapted it to the situation. So the thing most salespeople get wrong is that they've lost the art of the interview, which is, in the first interaction, the only thing you should be thinking about is making a connection and understanding the person you're selling to, and just ask questions. So, I mean, one of the things, actually, one of the best sales moments I've ever been in, and I hope he's not listening, Ian from Superdrug. But anyway, we're mates, so it's all right. But I remember, I wanted to get into Superdrug, and so I phoned up the buyer, a lovely guy called Ian, and I said, "Ian, can I take you out for lunch?" And I can't. I think we met at the Olympic Park, and we found a nice place, sat outside. We had a couple of beers and a chat. And you know what? The one question I said to him, we just chatted about anything, but the one question I said to him was, I said, "Ian, what are your KPIs? What are you targeted on out of interest?" And he said, "Oh, you'd be really surprised." I said, "No, go on, try me out." Because now, bear in mind, I was, at this point in my career, I was selling juice, right? So I was selling a brand of juice. Maybe talk about it later. But he said, "I'm targeted on own label." I'm like, and in my head, I'm thinking, "Oh, bugger, I'm selling a brand and they're targeted on own label, like Superdrug brand. This is going to be a problem." And he said, "But let me explain. I'm targeted on growing sales for anything that Boots don't have in their range, because because basically we want to drive Superdrug as an alternative to Boots, and therefore we want to compete by offering them things that Boots don't." So now, at this point, I hadn't sold to Boots at all. So I said, "All right, Ian, so if I made a really big sacrifice and didn't sell to Boots, would my juice count as your own label? And therefore, would it count within your targets?" He said, "Yeah, it would." And he said, "My boss would love it, because the only thing my boss asked me about, the only thing he asked me is, what's my share of own label?" So I said, "Oh, that's great." And he said, "Oh, one more request," he said. And he said, I hope this doesn't sound sexist, but anyway, he said, "We're running a promotion, and I think it was breast cancer awareness or something." Mm-hmm. So they wanted lots of pink things, right? I know it's stereotypical, and I'll probably get into trouble, but they had like Colgate pink toothpaste. And so, if you could make me a pink drink, John, that'd be amazing. I happen to have pink lemonade in development in my lab at the time, sort of thing. Right. So I said, "Oh, that's brilliant." So I said, "Ian, that's great." So listen, it's obviously going to be a big sacrifice for me not to sell to Boots, because they're bigger than you and they're massive and that sort of thing. Obviously, it cost me tens of thousands of pounds to create a pink drink. That's like a big request. So the only way I can see this working, Ian, I'm terribly sorry, is if literally you stock at least 6 flavors of ours in every single store that you've got. and I can't afford to do any promotions. You might have to do those yourself. And he's going, yeah, no, this is great. As long as its own label, it's fine. And so we literally over
just off that one question that you asked, basically.
I know. I just started
like
with what are you targeted on, and like that one question, like just ask anybody. Just people feel awkward about it, but just go, look, what are your targets? What or what keeps you up at night? What's the single biggest business problem that you've got? What is your boss asking you every single day? What promotion do you want? Where do you see a career? There are 6 or 7 questions that sound innocent that all tell you within 2 seconds, the answer to
exactly what that person's drivers are and what's going to make them succeed.
The best one, right? I'll just quickly tell you this. The best one was the Tesco buyer. So I'd started at Suntory. We had a big conference over in Ireland, and we'd invited the Tesco buyer over to present to us on the Tesco strategy, which was a genius move, actually, because you end up getting to spend a good amount of time with them. It's about 4 a.m. in the morning. We just, up at the bar very late. And this guy loves chatting. He really does. He's lovely and also a big ego at the same time. Yeah. And you can imagine, the kind of, what a Tesco buyer might be like. And anyway, he looked at me 4 a.m, however many drinks in, and said, "John, how will you make me famous in Tesco?" And I thought, you know what? That's a really good question, actually, because something clicked in my head thinking, do you know what? You've got a career, just like I've got a career. You've got aspirations. You want to get promoted. And actually, well, if it sounds a bit selfish to go, how do you get me promoted? Well, I'm going to phone your boss and say, you should give Dave a promotion. But I don't know. I'm not going to do that. But I thought, actually, that kind of sums up something people forget, that we're all on a journey and on a career. And, suppliers can help you do a great job and make you look great by doing something special that, will help them get promoted. Great.
Definitely. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. Everyone's got their own drivers and their career. Everyone's different. I mean, obviously we're out there speaking to candidates all day, every day in the job market. And that's one of the things that we talk to every single candidate that's looking for a job. Like, what's your top 3 drivers when you consider looking for a new job? Some people it's money, and some people it's living down the street from the office. Some people are working from home full time, and everyone's got different things. You've got to make sure that they align, basically, or it's just not going
the other thing that might surprise you, I don't know, but the amount of times that customers of mine have a little quiet word and go, can I just chat about something off record here with you? I'm thinking about moving, and I thought you might know the right kind of people in that space, so people that you deal with as customers, you become friends, and you build up a trust. And there are also people that phone you up and ask you job advice and go, can you put a word in, or can you give me a recommendation? Because I think one thing that you learn more and more and more as you go through your career is just the power of your relationships.
Network,
and it's just so powerful if you use them in the right way.
Definitely, yeah. Well, I mean, in our game in recruitment, it's what you think early on in your career that clients are one set of people and candidates are the other. But actually, when
they're the same,
you're the exact same people. Because one candidate going forward for a job, they don't get the job that you put them for. This has happened to us dozens, if not hundreds of times. You put a candidate forward for a job, and they maybe get pipped to the post, and you've got a good relationship with them, and then they land at another place in a hiring manager's position
all the time, mate.
They don't like the recruiter that placed them because they were a bit of a knob, and they phone you up saying, like, I had a great little rapport with you, even though you didn't place me in that company, and then they come to you with some business, and it's just all network. That's how
it is, mate. How you treat me as a candidate is directly proportional to how likely I am to hire you in the next job to do my recruitment. I mean, it's just how it works. Okay. I mean, the worst experience I had once was, occasionally you get these really super arrogant headhunters. I met him in a Mayfair club, and I'm very honest about my career. And then he kind of at the end, he just says, just to let you know, I'm not going to put you forward for this role. And it's a role I thought I had a great shot at. And in fact, in this particular case, someone I'm very close to is friends with the chairman. And I'm sat there going, mate, You don't have to be an arse. And also, you don't know who I know. And I hate play. I'd never play that kind of game. But I'm sat there going, I'm having a conversation with you. But my other alternative was to talk to my friend, who's the chairman's friend, and just say, could they put my CV in directly? That was that was going to be my other plan. And I'm just thinking, can you imagine if that happens? I get the job. And then the first thing I'm going to do is, listen, mate, I can tell you who's out of here. It's you.
Exactly. Yeah. No, it happens everywhere. It's such a lot of people don't get that though. The whole
they don't, do they?
Thing, no. And what I find quite strange as well about that topic, especially in places like LinkedIn, for example, is that if I put myself in the position of a job seeker, like, and obviously knowing what I know now as like someone who spent 16 years in the recruitment industry, that networking thing should never stop. That's not something that you turn on when you're looking for a job. That's something, that's a human being relationship thing. That's its most basic level. It's a human being communication thing where you sort of always trying to build relationships and do the right thing, and always thinking about how, and it's another thing that I think people don't maybe realize around the networking topic, is that how you treat someone now can easily, and I mean easily, come back round to bite you in the arse in 5 years or 10 years or whatever. And I genuinely don't think that DigiTalent, my business, would have gotten off the ground if I had been a certain way, which is not my personality. But if I had been like chest beating, bums on seats, trying to squeeze people into jobs in my early career and doing people over just for the money and all this, but if I had chosen that path, I 100%. Don't think that DigiTalent would have actually gotten off the ground, because most of our early clients actually were candidates that I placed in 2005 and I had kept in touch with. And people that and not even people that I'd placed in jobs, just people that I'd put forward and I'd gotten on well with, and I'd given them advice through their career and tried to introduce them to people. And you don't realize at the time, but I was so thankful that when I made the decision to launch DigiTalent, that I'd been a nice guy. You're
absolutely right. That is such a good point. It reminds me actually of a colleague from Britvic days, Sophie, absolutely wonderful person. At this point in my career, I'd left Britvic and moved on. And anyway, she phoned me up and she said, would you offer some advice for somebody in my team about networking? And I'm like, yeah, great. I said, of course I would, but just out of interest, why did you think of me? And her answer was really revealing. She goes, because you're the only person that phones me up when you don't need something. Yeah. And I'm like, oh. She goes, you've just got this ability to maintain a relationship when there's nothing transactional at stake.
Yeah.
And she goes, you're one of the few people that does that.
Rare. It's and rare that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's rare that I have to remind myself about that just with friends. Just check in on your friends and say, call up and say hello when you're not needing anything, because you don't want to be that person that people only hear from when you want something off them.
It's amazing as well, like how many times I've phoned someone up or I've worked in someone's offices, just say, oh, do you mind if I just camp in your office for half a day? And out of those conversations that there's no agenda, usually 2 or 3 fascinating connections happen. It's like your sister-in-law and Tesla, isn't it? It's that kind of thing. It's just in conversation, just talking about life, almost guaranteed every time something interesting, either a way you can help someone or a way they can help you that isn't sort of forced.
That's how our business got started in Australia. That's exactly it, because I managed to convince my business partner Dylan to come on board with me after I'd launched DigiTalent for 9 months in the UK. And then he was splitting up from his wife, sadly, at the time, and he was moving from Sydney to Melbourne, and just to sort of make a break from like the group of friends that they were in, which I was a bit like, oh my God, at the time, because all of our clients and candidates that we knew were in the Sydney market, and I was thinking, oh, how's this going to go? And what happened was he moved in with a friend, and he had just so happened to be quite high up in a digital agency, which just so happened to be one of our target clients. and they offered them just like a desk to come in and work, you know, like not us talking about recruitment or anything. And obviously when you're in there and you're in the vicinity of different people and you go for coffee with people, you just get chatting to them, you build relationships, then all of a sudden they come to them and they're like, oh, hey, can you just help us with this UX designer or software engineer?
I totally agree.
Type thing. And that's how we ended up getting the momentum to actually build the team in
fact,
Australia.
there's a design agency that I've worked with in the past that I'm doing a little bit with now. In fact, going to get them on my podcast soon. And they're starting to move back now. Now we're coming out of lockdown, but they've got more space than they need. And they're like, we're not quite sure what to do with it. And I said, I'll tell you what you do with it. Give it for free to your clients to come and work in as a London base, right? Because they may not be able to afford it now. But I tell you what, even if they just sit and work in your office space, I promise you'll have conversations over a coffee that will lead to more work for you. I promise. Don't think about it as a cost. I almost guarantee they'll go, oh, my friend's launching a new brand. Maybe you could help them out, sort of thing. Those conversations will guarantee happen if you're in the same vicinity.
Definitely. It's like osmosis, you know, you just like just being in the same, you know, room and watching someone's behavior and it rubs off. But just being in the room is powerful enough. Awesome. Where were we up to there? I've lost track of where
I think we were Britvic International originally. I think I went on a bit of a detour, but we're in Britvic International for 3 years. We doubled the business, didn't we? I say we, me and Clark and that we. But anyway, led by Clark and a little team, about 30 of us. We doubled the business in 3 years. Absolutely brilliant. And actually, probably the one of my most proudest moments. Really enjoyed that. Learned a lot. One of my most proudest moments came after that in my career, actually, because I'd done 3 years. And as I say, been successful. But then to get on in Britvic, I needed to be in the UK team, because Britvic is a very UK-centered organisation. Maybe 60% of sales are in the UK. So to get profile and to progress in the organisation. And I had gone on, one of these management retreats where they take kind of a selection of people in the kind of middle of their career, middle management, that they want to kind of nurture and grow. And we'd gone away to to this kind of country retreat and done 3 days with management consultants and trainers and stuff. And I remember there was one chart that stuck out at me. I mean, I can't remember anything else, but there's one chart and it's ridiculously simple. And this guy, and it was kind of at the end of the kind of 2 or 3 days, and he put these 2 circles with a little overlap. And he said, basically, think about all your personal passions, the things that you want to do in life, things that motivate you. And on the other circle, write all the business problems and needs that the organization has. Find the little overlap, and that could be your gap to do something you love and solve a problem the business has. Find the meeting of those 2 things. And I thought it's, that's ridiculously simple, but such good advice. And I thought, I knew exactly what it was, because I love innovation, and Britvic had been famous in the past for innovation. But the problem they'd got is they'd got too big. So because they'd grown to over £1 billion as a turnover. So when you launch a £2 million new little brand, it used to get forgotten. So what they'd do is they'd do this big fanfare. We're going to launch a new energy drink. So the energy drink would launch literally the next month. They'd go, right, now on to Pepsi and Britvic and J2O and Robinsons and Fruit Shoot. So the problem they had was they could never make innovation work, because they would just literally launch and leave. And innovation, as you probably know, is something you have to nurture. You have to overcommit to. You have to work really hard. You have to keep at it. You can't just put it on TV for 5 minutes and then expect the job to be done. So I basically was really inspired by these 2 circles, and I phoned the sales director and marketing director at Britvic, and I said, can I have breakfast with you Monday morning? And I'm going to present to you my mission and my idea. And I'd taken these Post-it notes and flip charts, and I was going to create a new business within Britvic that managed innovation from a sales and marketing, the whole thing together. I called it Seed Brands, was the idea. And of course, I sat there at 8 o'clock in the morning at breakfast with these 2 very important people, and I realised that what seemed very clear to me on a Friday at the end of a kind of an off-site, where I was all motivated in the kind of cold, dark room on a Monday morning, was like just scribbles on a bit of paper, and it was a bit of an awkward one, but they got it. They got the essence of the passion and what I was trying to do. So they said, look, go away and work the idea up, and come back to us, and we'll consider it. So I worked with the other bit of the jigsaw, which was very important at the time, is PepsiCo have got an investment in Britvic. They own 10% of the company, but they've got a franchise bottler agreement that runs for like 20, 30 years. And Britvic is the 4th biggest bottler in the world. And the reason that's important to know is that part of the pressure was coming from Pepsi to launch a new brand. So like Liptonized tea or Mountain Dew, whatever. And they were continually disappointed because Pepsi sales were going up and up and up because we were very good at that. But the innovation stuff was just getting neglected. So I went to Barcelona to the big Pepsi conference, and I met with the general manager, a guy called Garrett, who's a fabulous guy. Again, really, smart, very supportive, real people person as well. And I said to Garrett, look, you are giving we as Britvic, £5 million a year in advertising money to go and promote the new brands. I said, what if you gave me the money, but instead I created a dedicated team? We had our own van sales, we had our own merchandisers, we had our own head office salespeople, but I want to manage it end to end outside of the normal system. And I'll operate it like a separate business, and you'll have 50% investment in it, sort of thing. So basically within about 3 months, I created this. It wasn't a real joint venture. It was a virtual joint venture where we had a board made up of 3 Pepsi people, 3 Britvic people. I ran it. I created a team in its heyday, about 40 strong. And basically I managed it from the idea stage through to actually it going into store. So I actually had van sales going into stores in London and putting the product on shelf and making sure it got, really over invested in. And so I ran that for 3 years. And it was the brands that I took over, the Pepsi brands I took over were worth 7 million when I started and were worth 50 million when I left. So I was really, really happy about that. Yeah, absolutely brilliant. And that was my most entrepreneurial part of my career, where I really got to own something, create it from scratch. I hired people, from scratch. Now, of course, the only thing is I'm playing with other people's money. That's the only sort of, that's the only difference. But I did
entrepreneur is what we call it nowadays.
Yeah. And because what happened to me, which won't surprise you whatsoever, is at the end of the 3 years, I'm sat there going, hang on a second, 50 million quid from 7 million quid. This has gone pretty well, but I don't see any of it, sort of like that. So, and because I was at that point senior enough in the organization that I was in the long-term incentive scheme. So I was on a 3-year rolling cycle of share options.
Right.
But actually we'd gone through a period where we'd started to miss the target. Now, although I had done very well and grown the sales within this little team, the overall company was below the target. So I didn't get the kind of, and my salary at the time was low relative to my seniority as well. So I was putting all this effort in and not seeing anything. So at that point, I did what was going to be my big break. So so it was mostly Pepsi brands that I'd launched at the time. It was Mountain Dew, Liptonized tea, Gatorade were the 3 big, V Water as well, which is vitamin water. So they were the 4 major brands. And to make the financials work, I tucked in to the little team a little Britvic brand called Purdy's, which was this absolutely super brand. And it was like a natural energy drink. So very, very ahead of its time. Yeah. And I'd seen that I'd done with a little bit of effort that had really taken off. And that had really inspired me, because I'd realized that, with the right proposition, the right investment, you can do some great things. So I actually went to private equity company to try and raise money to then do something like that myself. And at the same time as I was doing that, this private equity company was in the process of buying a juice company at the same time. And they said, well, look, we could either back you to go out and find a brand to buy, or you come and work for us and help us with the brand we've already got. So why don't we crash the 2 ideas together? So that led to the next phase of my career, which was basically a management buy-in to a juice business. Private equity backing. So, we had to raise 12 million quid, to buy the brand, the factory, the assets and all that kind of thing. And that was kind of like the next, the proper adventure where I actually owned something.
Yeah. And talk me through how that played out, because I'm guessing that's
well, as you can see behind me, I'm not in my mansion yet, so you could probably or I'm not talking to you from my private island.
Yeah.
So
No
yeah,
palm
it
trees
didn't.
in the background yet.
Yeah, exactly. So that was, oh man, that was such a roller coaster of an experience.
I bet, yeah.
There's some, I mean, so it started I tell you day one, right? So I'd been used to big corporate environments, all day meetings, having a PA, working ridiculous hours, but just mostly talking to people, and delegating. And then I remember day one turning up in Wednesbury in the, just outside Birmingham, very kind of working class kind of team and environment. They just didn't relate to me very, who is this guy? This like posh Southern boy turns up in our, like, what's he doing here kind of thing. It was a lot like that. The owners were still, the old owners that had sold were partly involved, and they're very opinionated and thought, who's this upstart telling us how to run our own business sort of thing. And I remember I sat there in my room day one, and I wrote down on my pad of paper, like I would do at Britvic every day, here are the 20 things I'm going to focus on today. And like by 10 o'clock, I'd done them all. And then I was like, I've got no meetings. There's nothing happening. What do I do? Yeah. So it was a very weird experience. And I realized, there's freedom in that, because actually what I could do was go, okay, so how are we going to transform this business? Where are we going to invest? Which customers are we going to go for? What are we going to do? And so I realized in that situation, it's only as successful as you are. Whereas in a big company, you're a cog, right? You have a part to play, but you're in a machine, which is good and it's bad.
It's a classic thing about like business ownership, which I struggle with all the time, is that like it's the difference between working in and working on the business.
Totally.
Like if you're looking down and in, it's like anything in life. You're looking down and in, you got your head down. You can't see what's going on up and out in front of you. You can't plan for the next part of the business and where you're going to go and the strategy behind it and where the business will be in 3 years or in 5 years type thing. So yeah, that's really, really important. Yeah, go on. So like the juice company in the Midlands, tell us.
Yeah, well, it's a weird thing, because you think, I've worked on some of the biggest drinks brands in the country and internationally. So you look at it and go, well, why is a guy that's done that gone and worked for a juice brand that no one's ever heard of with absolutely no spend, nothing, no spend against it at all? But what it was I wanted to own part of something properly, and with private equity, they do what they call sweet equity or sweat equity, where you get to buy into the company, but you also get to increase your shareholding as the company becomes successful, and potentially you can get quite a big multiple on your original investment, and you can get quite a lot of return in a fairly short space of time. So that's the the broad plan and reason for doing it. And I wanted to, having worked on innovation a lot, I wanted to cut my teeth in a real environment, real factory, real sales team, real, all the rest of it. And I had an absolute blast I was there 4 years, and it was a roller coaster. I mean, that's probably how I can describe it. And there were so many lessons I learned. I mean, I seem to have covered a lot of my failures in this call. But anyway,
those are the most interesting things.
I'll tell you the big failure first, and then we'll get on to the fun stuff that actually did go all right. But again, timings when you're working in a small company is so much quicker, because one of the reasons small companies are great is you move faster. So the investment private equity company said, John, you've got 12 weeks to launch the brand. And what they wanted to do, this is kind of a traditional juice business that sold into cafes and delis and schools and all the kind of non-retail sort of part of the market that basically allows them to charge a higher price and not have to compete tooth and nail in Tesco. And it was a good quality product. It was very, very, very good quality juice, very big flavor range, but there wasn't a strong brand, as it were. So basically they said, look, we've invested in some new technology, a new production line to improve the margin from 15% to 40%. So it made it very, very profitable, from being sort of quite low profit margin to very high. But because we're spending all this money, I had to redesign the packaging, so the bottle itself, the label design, the flavor range, the support materials that go into launch. Now, what I did in 12 weeks normally takes 12 months for a big company.
Right.
And this is where small companies make a difference, because I could sign stuff off immediately. I could focus the the factory on just doing the one thing I wanted them to do, rather than compromising over production schedules between these different brands. The sales team did nothing other than this brand, so everything was much, much quicker. And I'll start with a success, then I'll tell you the failure as well. So I'll start on a high. But one of the things that I'm really proud of was in that year when I was working on Gatorade earlier, before I left Britvic, there was a new technology called augmented reality that was just coming out at the time. It was kind of like the next big thing in marketing. And this startup called Blipper had pitched me when I was in charge of Gatorade, and it said, we can apply augmented reality to your packaging so that if you or your advertising. So imagine, you can imagine the glamour that I was doing before, and then going to this, because we sponsored Sky Cycling. We had Victoria Pendleton was one of our brand ambassadors. We had Bradley Wiggin, all that. I went to the 2012 Olympics that year, and it was all very high profile. Anyway, but this little startup Blipper had pitched this idea to me, and they this was their sort of first year. And they said, look, imagine an advert like with Victoria Pendleton in it, and you put your phone over it and the advert comes to life, and you see Victoria going back to the start line and drinking Gatorade, and then you see her winning. And it's almost like it combines, 2 dimensions with 3 dimensions. So it kind of, it augments your reality. And this was stunning technology. Absolutely. I was blown away by it. But the team at Pepsi were a bit unconvinced by it, because the amount of money involved, I think it was £30,000 they were asking for to only get potentially 30,000 views. They were like, but this is so expensive relative to the number of people that see it. And I was like, no, but it's not about how many people see it. It's about the word of mouth it creates, because imagine we were the first drink in the world to do this. Anyway, so I'd had this conversation on Gatorade.
You have that on like bottles of wine and stuff now, don't they? Like there's a bottle of wine that I really like. Haven't been drunk for ages, but I mean, it's called 19 Crimes. It's like an Australian one, and it's like it's all around the story behind it. It's about the convicts who there's supposed to be 19 different bottles of wine, 19 different characters, and you download the app and you hover it over the bottle picture, and
that's right.
The black and white photo of what looks like a 19th century inmate. They start talking to you and telling you
that's about it. You've just described it brilliantly.
They start talking to you about their story and how he landed on Australia for stealing a loaf of bread and all of this sort of stuff. And you're right, because it's not about like who sees it, but I must have sent that to like, I posted it on social media, and like I sent it to about 20 of my mates going, look, check this out. It's like a bottle of wine type thing. So it's the amplification of it, isn't it?
100%. So as you imagine, like, this is 2013, right? This wasn't even a thing back then.
Yeah.
So I'd heard about it when I was on Gatorade. I'd started on this brand called Juice Burst, and I had 12 weeks to launch it. But that's the time I got given. And basically what I would, I love simple things. As a marketer, I love making things stupidly simple. And basically, when I was coming up with the proposition for the juice brand, I'm like, well, clearly, this is basically healthy tango. This is basically juice exploding. It's the hit of real fruit. It's basically a healthy alternative to what tango, was famous for back in the 90s. So I thought, I know what I'm going to do. Rather than do what every juice brand does, which is have a nice little posse of really nicely presented fruit with maybe some characters and on a white background, I thought I'm going to have a black background to be a bit rebellious. But the thing I'm going to do is I'm going to blow the fruit up and just have a massive explosion of fruit on the packaging. And then the idea came to me, well, why don't I, rather than photograph it, why don't I film it, so that when you've got when you put your phone on the packaging, the fruit starts as a whole and explodes on the packaging out at you when you put your phone in front. So I hired a Hollywood grade camera, Phantom Flex camera, 4,000 frames a second or whatever those things are capable of. I got one of the best design agencies in London to work on it. And we basically filmed over 3 days, exploding different types of fruit. Right. And we had to invent, this is make you laugh, we had to invent the world's smallest charge. Because basically, when you explode blueberries, the smallest charge you can commercial grade explosive you can buy obliterates it so completely that by the time the cameras filmed it, there's nothing there. So we actually had to invent the world's smallest ever charge to put in this blueberry. So when we exploded it didn't explode it too badly so that we could, film it in time. But we exploded pineapples, exploded, melons, we exploded, oranges and apples and bananas. Literally we had like a fruit expert, like a fruit makeup artist who was there to kind of make the fruit look great before we then literally obliterated the thing. Amazing. So we did that. We also created a game, and actually this is an interesting insight. So that was cool. And I thought that would be the thing, but I added this secret game into it. So when you exploded the fruit, you then had another level where you could then make a fruit machine. So you imagine the fruit would then spin round the bottle. And if the fruit lined up in a line, you could win a free case of Juice Burst. Yeah. And it was pretty good fun. And I used to show buyers, and there was a 1 in 3 chance of winning. What I didn't realize though is it ended up in this gaming forum where people were doing hacks on how to win prizes. And so I got this call from our customer service one afternoon. She goes, Wendy, lovely lady, and she goes, John, I've just noticed 50 people have won the prize in the last hour. And I'm like, what? 50 people? And literally, I had this little automatic notification in my inbox. Whenever somebody won, I got notified. It was kind of an auto thing. And I went back to my desk and literally pages and pages and pages of my email and I'm like, oh, I'm going to crash the company because someone's obviously gamed it and they've suddenly started winning. And it was never, I controlled the win rate in the background. So I quickly phoned Blip and go, can you turn that win rate down for me? But it had gone viral basically. And everyone, I had 250,000 people play it in about 5 minutes, it had just gone nuts. And this is why I go back to my Gatorade conversation. That's why I did it, because it created this enormous buzz. And the other thing I could do is I could walk into any customer and go, this is the world's first augmented reality drink. Right now, I know it sounds, most of them were like, say again, what's that? They're like, no idea. But it gave me a reason to talk to people and go, we are doing something very innovative. And the other thing, you're talking about your wine label. My business card had you remember Princess Leia in Star Wars, how she appears in the hologram, when they talk to each other. I filmed myself in black and white doing a little talk about the brand, and I made it as a hologram that came out on my business card. So you put your phone in front of my card, and then I kind of like hover like this, like she does in Star Wars. And I basically ripped it off. And it was the funniest day. Talk about culture clash, right? So, literally salt of the earth people in Wednesbury. I genuinely got to know and love them, and it was brilliant. And they were looking at me going, "Geez, this guy's posh," but can you imagine, right? So posh boy turns up. First problem. Second problem is I then say we're going to launch the world's first augmented reality drink, and they're like, "What?
What's that?" Yeah.
And then the third problem was I'm going to film all of you as an avatar coming out of your own business card. So can you come in on this particular day? We've got the whole green screen, we've got the big camera out, and we're going to film you. And I've never had a tougher day at work cajoling these people to go, they forgot their names. I mean, I remember this guy, Ian, who was like the top salesman, super, the sort of guy that could talk to anyone and like really sure of himself. And I said, right, Ian, all you have to do is say, hi, I'm Ian from Juice Burst. This is the world's first augmented reality drink. If you want to find out more, my details are on the card below, right? I said, that's your script, mate. Go for it, right? Yeah. He'd go, oh, hi. And he would just like freeze. And then I go, Ian, hi, I'm Ian.
Because they're not used to having a camera pointed at them. And just because it's for when you're not used to it, you're like, oh my God,
The art is forgetting it's there, isn't it? I mean, that's the art, is you just have to ignore it, But these people were just petrified. Anyway, we got there in the end, but they just didn't know what to do with it. It was anyway, it bless them. But I ended up winning a DBA Gold Award Grand Prix thingy-majiggy in the design world, which is kind of very high profile for that launch, because I did it on zero budget, because Blipper, bless them, committed to the technology for free, because I went and did a deal with them and I said, look guys, I can't afford to pay you because I've got nothing, but if you do this for me, I'm sure Coca-Cola and Pepsi are going to be knocking on your door in 5 minutes time going, oh, we love this, can you do it for me? And lo and behold, 18 months later, my target was to become the first Blipper millionaire. So I wanted the first person to get 1 million interactions on Pack. And I think I got to 300,000 or 400,000. And then Coke decided to do it. And they did this big promotion on all their cans. And of course they blow me out the water, sort of thing. But I did say, well, look, there you go. And then the following year, I created Juice Wars, which is basically your phone turns into the Millennium Falcon. Imagine your phone is the kind of cockpit. You've got two buttons either side. And then what happens is fruit comes out of the bottle in different sequences, and you've got to move your phone and blast the fruit. And then you get like levels, so lieutenant and commander and wing commander and that kind of thing. And that became the new competition. And do you know what, going back to my sales experience, we were talking earlier about don't sell. I remember I was with a colleague of mine who was actually the best salesperson we had. She was absolutely brilliant. But we went to see One Stop, and wonderful buyer, Dave Truman there, absolute legend of a guy. And she went into the meeting and she started talking to Dave about the price. So we got this new bottle coming out. It's only £3.16 a case. And she started going into the terms, bless her. She was so, so all on it. She was wonderful. And then I was like, Dave, have you seen our new little game here, Juice Wars? So I handed him my phone and literally spent the rest of the meeting just blasting juice around the thing. At the end of it, I said, so obviously you're going to take our new range of drinks then? Yeah, that's fine. I'll take them. That's fine. What was the price again? And I'm sure I went, £4.20, Dave, and it was like, put the price up in the meeting kind of thing because it distracted him. But, I mean, that was good fun. But to get back to the business of it. So, that was the good thing. Well, that was one of the good things, and that was great. Unfortunately, what happened the summer after, and this prepared me for a pandemic actually, because it's probably pretty similar. But when we built a new production line, and we launched the brand in the summer, and it was 2000. When was this? Must have been 2013. I think it was one of the hottest summers we'd had in a long time. And the thing with juice is very, very sensitive to production. So you have to make it on ultra clean lines. They're called aseptic lines. They're very, very thoroughly cleaned, and they have to be very hygienic. And anyway, because of we had a mold infection on the production line because the new bottle was slightly different design to the old one. And basically what was happening is in 1 in every 2 bottles, mold was growing under the cap and dropping into the drink. Now, there's nothing more disgusting than buying a fresh juice and seeing something floating in it. It literally will put you off your dinner. You know what I mean? And as part of the launch, I'd managed to get us into WH Smith's, and I got us into One Stop, and I got us into Tesco, and we got quite a few customers that were early adopters of the brand, which is wonderful.
Yeah.
And I got a call from WH Smith's going, we've had a record level of complaints about people getting mold in the drink, and we're going to have to delist you. And we'd worked so hard to get these big customers to stock us, and they ended up coming up to literally audit our factory and see what's going wrong. We had to close the factory. We had to sort of recommission it and clean it all and start again. And it was like, I've never been more shaken, I think, in my career, seeing something I'd invested in, work my socks off for, disappear in front of me. I mean, obviously we had to stop selling immediately in a hot summer where people are going mad, mad for drinks. And then actually we ended up identifying 96, I think it was, failures on the production line of various kinds, quality control or the way we filter the water. I mean, it's one of those things, I think there's probably, the line had run for many, many years and it was fine. But then suddenly when you change something, it throws a lot of stuff out. But whether it's, health and safety policies, we literally went forensically through it. It took us 6 weeks then to have to relaunch it. And of course, by that point, 30% of our customers had given up on us. Yeah. So having had my glamorous augmented reality world's first drink launch, literally a few weeks later, I'm sat there. I remember, I can tell you in a moment. So Gary, the MD, and who came up with the idea of buying this business, wonderful guy. He and I were trying to work out what had gone wrong, and we said, look, we couldn't see the problem in the factory or in the warehouse, but customers were complaining like there was no tomorrow. So we're thinking, this is weird. It looks fine when it leaves, but by the time it gets to the customer, it's not. And we thought, we had a hypothesis that maybe it's hidden under the cap, because what we'd done is we used to have this seal between the cap. So, like on milk, you have that little seal. You take off the top, white thing. The little white thing. We had that little white thing. Yeah, we had that. But we had removed it because we were told we didn't need it. And so we thought, that's one of the things we've changed. Maybe it's that. So the hypothesis was the mold might be in the cap. So we went down and said, let's take a pallet apart between us, and let's take every dodgy drink goes left and the good one goes right. And let's see how bad the problem is. 50% of the pallet had already got mold growing under the cap, but because it's under the cap, you couldn't see it.
Can't see it. Yeah.
Yeah. So we eventually diagnosed that it was the cap supplier. It was unhygienic, and it was a particularly bad year for pollen that year. There was basically all these things collided. We removed the seal that was basically had been preventing anything like that happening. And so you collect all these bits together. But it was just, how did
that make you feel?
Oh, absolutely gutted. I mean, it talk about a knock to the ego apart from anything else, but you feel that deep sense of worry. I mean, there are jobs at stake. There's investment at stake. There's reputation at stake. There's customers shouting at you. And the other thing you realize is, if I don't, there were three of us that had bought into the business as a finance guy, Tom, but me and Gary basically were the day-to-day people that ran the business, ran the ship.
Yeah.
And I think I learned that, look, if you don't do it, no one else will. If you don't step in and do something, and if you don't pick people up, and I mean, we had wonderful sales people, customer service people, warehouse people, and you could see how upset they were. I had just arrived, but for them, a lot of them had been there 30 years. They were born and bred. In fact, I can't remember what percentage. It was like 80% of people we employed were from within 2 miles of the factory. It was a properly local born and
business,
bred. Massively. And they had a connection to it, and the history and the heritage and stuff. And so it really was, these, smooth talking people come up and they just screw the whole thing up, So it took me a few days of shock, I think, to then get my grip again and suddenly go, right, we're going to solve this. We're going to do what it takes. It'll be all right. And actually, I'd say within a year, we were back to where we hoped we would be. And, and we'd got the business up and running again. But actually what we learned, as I say, the forensic analysis of the factory and understanding the 95 things, in a weird sense, there was nothing I could not tell you about how to make a juice. And I would never have known that. But I could tell you intimately about the bottle design, the amount of headspace you need. There's a thing called oxygen ingress, which is where oxygen permeates through the plastic of the bottle, the rate at which that happens, the barriers that stop it. I mean, there was no technical detail I did not know about the juice, the bottle, the packaging, the production process, the cleaning regimes.
It's that whole like learning from failure
huge.
Thing. You just don't you just don't get the value from just everything going right that you can then take to other things, or at least not as much.
It did, and actually, I remember doing a talk once. This is slightly later when I'm at Suntory, called my five biggest failures. And of course, the twist in the story, because I tell this story in the training that I did, the twist, of course, is that the 5 biggest failures precipitated or preceded my 5 biggest successes. So it's what I learned in those 12, 16 weeks. And it's the decisions I made and what I was able to then do differently after that. We then got on this lovely trajectory where that was in year 1. For the next 3 years, we grew at 30% a year. We became the fastest growing brand of soft drink in the UK for 2 years running. And, we got this brilliant trajectory going, and I did lots of innovation. I launched lots of new products. We were the first schools approved drink when the government changed the regulation. We launched a skinny version. We, lots of stuff like that. So we did an amazing job. The reason I'm not in my mansion or, on my private island,
or Caribbean island,
exactly, is it, and again, this is one of those things you learn. In being a minority shareholder means you don't get to decide anything really. And the investors had basically signed us up on the basis of an expected 4-year turnaround. And the way businesses are the way these deals are financed is they borrow money, but they have a guaranteed rate of return to the investors. So in this case, it would be 15%, right? So the investors are guaranteed that return. Now, what that means is you have to grow the business way more than that for you to then get your return. So basically the lawyers get paid first, the debtors get paid second, and then management get paid last, basically on the proceeds that are left over. But if you can't grow the business fast enough, the original debt that's owed to the loans basically have to be repaid. Grow and grow and grow. So you're in this very weird position where the sooner you sell it, assuming you're growing quickly enough, the sooner you sell it, the lower the debt you have to pay back is. But if you extend the ownership for longer, the investors are happy because they call them loan notes. They get them back at their guaranteed rate. Yeah. But actually, as management, you get less. So this decision was taken after about 3 years. That they wanted to almost double the ownership time frame from 4 years to 7 to 8 years. And my shareholding actually was worth less at the end of the 8 years than it was after 4 years. Yeah. So and the other thing I'd done as well, and this is not a bit of naivety on my part, is I'd taken a massive pay cut versus Britvic, and I'd put, and I'm not lying at all, I'd put every penny I had to buy as many shares as I could. So I'd gone all in.
Yeah, 100%. All chips then,
yeah, and potentially I was worth quite a lot on the back end of it, but I was worth less after 8 years than I was after 4. So I basically just thought, this ain't going to work. So a friend of mine, actually, he lives in Sydney as well. We should connect up. But he and I worked together at Britvic International. He'd moved to Sydney and was working for a drink company in Sydney called Frucor, which is also owned by Suntory. And he phoned me up and said, John, the marketing director role at Suntory in the UK is currently up, and I've already submitted your name and recommended you join. And fortunately, it was on a nice salary that would allow me to get myself on an even keel again. But here's the kicker. So if I left the business I was in to work for a competitor, I was forced to sell my shares back for a penny. So my life savings that I bought all the shares for technically were worth a penny if I left and went to work for a competitor. And this was one of the competitors. So I then had to do a pretty big deal. And the way I did the deal was say, I think Suntory might just be the likely acquirer of this company in future because it's in the same market. And therefore, wouldn't you rather I was in the company helping to broker the deal than you kind of pissed me off by paying me £1? So I ended up doing a deal. They gave me the estate back and we kind of shook hands and I left. But I regret it because I was hoping they were going to come back with a counter offer and try and work out a scenario where it could work out. But then I left to go to Suntory after that.
So you regret that, yeah? You change that looking back?
It's the most upset I've been leaving a job, and I tell you why. Because you go back to the factory problem we had. I vividly remember the moment where my departure was announced, and we got everybody into the boardroom, and I mean, half of them were in tears. And I'm not saying it's because it's me, I'm so important to all of you. It's not that, but what everyone said is I had hired most of the people in the room. I genuinely hired most of the people in the room. And what they all said to me, and I didn't quite realize this, is that we're here for you. We joined because you sold us this dream. Yeah. And if you don't believe this is happening, then I'm not sure we do either. And I kind of thought, oh man, because, everyone's got to make their own choices, haven't they? And I said, look, I can't even go in. I didn't even tell them as much as I've told you. I kind of said, look, I can't even say why I'm having to leave, or I can't even give you the details, but I wish it was different. And that was really emotional. It felt more personal than probably any job I've left.
Because most of those people have probably joined because they bought into your vision and you as a person, and it's like you don't leave a job, you leave your boss type thing. But when it
did have a nice family feel, and smaller businesses are like that, aren't they? In bigger companies, you're a cog in the machine, but the smaller it gets, the more kind of intimate it is, and the more people depend on each other.
I was in a similar position when I worked in Sydney, and my boss at the time was a fellow Glaswegian, and I got on with him like a house on fire. Not just for that, he was a Rangers supporter. Unfortunately, I'm Celtic, but there was always good banter and stuff, and I really respected him. He was a great manager, but also a friend. He was in that position where like you just didn't want to let him down with stuff, and you were like so like up for just running through walls just so that you didn't like let him down personally. And they went through a little situation where the big boss in the company left and everyone started applying for his job, and he went for it and didn't get it, and then he ended up leaving. And that was a realization for me. And I was like, I'm actually not here because it's this brand and this big, this company that's well respected. I'm actually here for him.
Yeah.
And I've stayed. Maybe that wasn't my reason for joining. Maybe it was the other way around.
It'd be your reason for staying. Yeah.
I'm here now, 4.5 years later, because he was my boss.
I think you don't leave a business, you leave a boss.
Yeah.
In many cases.
When he left, I remember sort of sitting there going, well, that's it then.
Yeah.
That's it. Because you just like, it's just changes your outlook. And it's something you probably don't think about consciously. But when something like that happens, it's a big realization of like how important that person is, that you sort of, I
agree. And I think bit of advice to give anybody, and I've not followed through this, so don't listen to me on this one. But when you go for a job interview, you are interviewing your potential boss.
Yeah.
And do the due diligence on your next future boss. Talk to people, find out what they're like, ask to chat to the team, really find out what they're like, because that makes such a difference. Positive and negative. You know what I mean? If you get a really good boss, it can be life-changing and really accelerate your career, but it can make you the most miserable you can imagine if you don't get it right.
Yeah, definitely. I think you can. Well, if you think about it this way, you can be with a not so good company and an amazing boss.
Yeah.
But you can't do it the other way around.
Yeah, totally.
Can't do it the other way around. You can't have a crap boss and an amazing company. It just doesn't get off the ground. So we say that to our candidates all the time when we're prepping them for interviews. You need to, be interviewing them. And I think a lot of people, when they go for job interviews, they can't wait to, like, when we used to do in-person interviews back in the day. Like, people can't wait to get out of there because it's like a high pressure situation. And, they ask them, have you got any questions? Oh, no. And they just want to get out, especially if it's like panel interviews and stuff. But it's as much about them as about the candidate interviewing the people in the room as it is the other way around.
I know. And I wish people would realize that, because you ask people, how does job interview go? They'll tell you, oh, this company does this, the culture's like that, the package is like this, my job's going to be like that. The most important thing is, well, would you enjoy working for this person? Have they got your best interest in heart? Can you learn from them? Will they give you the freedom to succeed? Will you go into battle for them? Do you trust them? They're the questions really that will actually make a difference.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. Awesome then. So talk to us about what happened with Suntory then.
So I got probably the biggest job, quote unquote, if you want to, if you kind of consider size of team or turnover or perception to be a thing, which was basically marketing director at. So it was then called Lucozade, Ribena, Suntory. They've reduced it to Suntory, and that was great because I got to lead a team working on Lucozade and Ribena, two of the biggest soft drink brands in the country. Lucosade's the biggest sports drink, and Ribena's the biggest fruit drink. So a real powerhouse team, owned by Suntory, Japanese company, with a very strong culture. Yatta Minahare, they would call it, is their kind of company motto, which roughly translates into, go for it or do what you love, sort of thing. It's got a lovely kind of, a lovely kind of meaning about, taking personal responsibility and absolutely going for it and being like a founder. They're very big on founders. They often tell the story of the kind of founding family, as it were. And they're very, very good. And I've got mixed feelings on that one, because it was, I was very unlucky timing wise, because between me leaving Purity, where I was before, and starting, because I did a 6-month notice period as part of the deal before I left to get my money back. Basically, the deal was, we'll give you the money back, but you've got to work this 6 months and get us to a certain point, which I did, which is great. In that time, the government announced a soft drink levy, sugar levy. So if you remember this, like 4 or 5 years ago, obesity was the big near and present danger. And a cheap win for David Cameron at the time was to announce that there'll be a tax on soft drinks to basically discourage kids buying full sugar drinks, right? Mm-hmm. It didn't make logical sense, because actually drinks account for, I think it's 7 or 8% of your total daily intake of sugar. There are other things that contribute much more, like confectionery, lots of other things basically contribute more. But anyway, it was an easy target. It was a high profile. So it was basically a political move from David Cameron. It got lobbied a lot and didn't succeed. So when I joined, my sole responsibility, my single biggest brief when I joined was, tell us what to do about the sugar tax. And it is almost like the impossible question where there's no good way through this. You know what I mean? There's so broadly you go, well, I mean, to give you context, so Suntory makes £80 million a year of profit in the UK. The sugar tax was 90 million. So you kind of look at that and go, well, not only would it wipe out the profit, but actually putting the prices up would reduce demand. So it'd be a double whammy. So in fact, you'd be pretty much out of business if you didn't do something quite radical. So we went through the strategy and we ended up deciding, and this was a really pivotal moment. We ended up deciding that we would reformulate every product we made to bring the sugar level down to below the government. The government had a max. So, I mean, without going too much into the science of it, the government set a limit of 5 grams of sugar per 100 mil. Lucozade is probably about 12. Ribena is probably about 12. So you're talking about taking about 60% of the sugar content. It's impossible to make it taste identical. I mean, to take that much sugar out changes the body, the mouthfeel, the sweetness profile. Now, there are techniques using natural sweeteners and artificial sweeteners that can compensate and can get you close, but it's quite, some people are more sensitive than others. Exactly. It's very hard to make the transition. And as you'll know from the Coke Classic experience in the 80s, even changing, and actually I learned something quite profound about the Coke Classic example, because I was doing the research into it. When the Coke Classic formulation, when the Coke had changed formulation in the US, they'd done the research, and the research said that the new flavor was better than the old flavor. And therefore they had launched. They then had a massive backlash. They had 7,000 letters. This was letters because before internet. So 7,000 letters they'd received in the first 24 hours or 48 hours. And I read this article about it, and they said people weren't upset that it didn't taste as good, because actually it tasted better. People were upset because the choice had been taken away. It's the fact that it had changed that was the issue. It didn't matter that it tasted better. It's like, no, that's the wrong. I think the report called it the wrong question problem, which was in the research. They should have said, how do you feel about the fact Coke will change something you've been drinking for 30 years, whatever? And if they'd asked that question, they would have got the right answer. Instead, they said, try this. We're not going to tell you what brand it is. Try this. Do you like it? And of course, everyone said, oh, it tastes like Coke. That's great. Oh, I'd buy that. They didn't realize that what the company were going to do is change what they were, Anyway, so effectively, we had to reformulate and relaunch Lucozade, and we got stung by pretty much the same thing, which is, well, actually, no, there were two things. One was the fact that we had changed it. Obviously, word got out on the internet. Twitter went mad. There was huge number of complaints. The fact that we were even reformulating, an 80-year-old recipe, et cetera, and that was hard to deal with. The second thing that's hard to deal with, and this is a bit more complicated and talks to the politics of a big organization, was that I was responsible for the original formulation, and I'd done what Coke had done, and we'd tested it rigorously, and we'd got a match for the old flavor overall as a profile. 20% of people, I think, could notice the difference, something like that. And, I'd signed it off. But unfortunately, what the factory ended up making didn't match what I'd signed off. And again, without kind of going into too much the technicality for it, but just to give you a sense of what I'm talking about, the factory were incentivized on efficiency. So their reward was make as many bottles as you can for the lowest possible cost. Now, in the old machinery that we operated, they have this kind of tolerance range. So when you add, for example, it's called bricks levels, which is how the raw materials come in. But if you imagine you add sugar, then you add aspartame, which is a sweetener. You had a certain level which was giving you the sensory profile, that the taste that was a match for the previous one. But they're allowed to operate within a bandwidth, right? Because the factory, because old technology is unreliable, you have this bandwidth that you can manufacture within. And the purpose of doing that is just to give you a bit of wiggle room. But what they were doing is they were turning the level of bricks, as it's called, down to the minimum to keep it from going to make the line stop, because they could then extend the production run for 7, 8, 9% of the time, so they could hit their efficiency levels. What they didn't realize is when you're up at a high level of sugar, 12 grams of sugar, if you're like a 1 gram lower, it makes no difference at all. If you're at 5 grams and you're 1 gram lower, it makes a massive difference as a percentage. Yeah, exactly. The percentage itself is massive. But also what I learned, and again, apologies for everyone who's listening for the kind of slight scientific lesson here, but when you're using intense sweeteners, some sweeteners are 100 times sweeter than sugar, right? They're very, very, very intense. And they are so sensitive to changes. So, a drop of, in this case, like 0.5 gram or 1 gram, has a huge impact on the flavor profile.
Yeah.
So what we discovered, but I discovered it way too late, was after we'd launched, we found 20% of our volume went down within about 6 weeks. So we basically lost. Now that, for a brand that size, we're talking 15 million pounds of profit, just like that go. Right. A huge social media backlash. You just don't know how bad it's going to get. So you're literally in panic mode. It kind of took me back to my moment in purity, where I thought, we'd trashed the business. And it took me about 6 months of forensic investigation to work out why the taste wasn't the taste that we had signed off and expected. And it was because the factory were, but the way you get into politics for big organization is that already at that point, the CEO had publicly stated, and I really remember this moment as I sit here today, he'd said to everybody, we have a marketing problem and marketing will fix it, because it was seen as a perception problem, not as a quality problem. So all the pressure was on me. And I'd been told that we couldn't go back to the old formulation. We couldn't reformulate again, that basically I had to market my way out of the problem. So I then had to go basically do lots of sampling, lots of in-store promotions, lots of advertising to try and convince people that this brand is great. Now, ironically, I ended up doing some of the best work I've done in my career in that pressure cooker. And we launched a new campaign for Lucozade called Energy Beats Everything. We did the biggest sampling campaign that's ever been done in the UK ever. We sampled 12 million people in a few weeks. So we literally unleashed, I referred to it from the Gladiator, unleash hell at my signal, unleash hell. And basically we were fighting for our lives, fighting for the long-term survival of this brand. And we did some truly brilliant work. We came together as a team. Some of the guys that were in the team that worked for me were absolute superstars and survived lots of bullets being thrown at them, lots of criticism, lots of customers complaining. I mean, I don't mean our drinkers, but I mean our, Tesco and Sainsbury's, who are going, hang on a minute, we're used to earning, we're used to seeing sales like this, and suddenly they're now low. We're losing money compared to what we expect. So they put us under a lot of pressure. But I had a target on my back, and that was the thing. So from the moment where the CEO says this is a marketing problem and marketing will fix it, effectively, I was walking the plank from that moment on. And what happened was I was kept in position long enough to fix it. But the moment it suddenly was, looking like it was on an even keel, that's when I got the bullet, and was fired. And I remember it quite vividly. And just talking openly to you, hope people listening kind of may relate, but I'd made it my mission to make sure that I didn't leave having not given it my all. And we had a planning session as a board and as an exec rather, and we'd identified something like 50 KPIs that would basically deliver the whole year, of which I think 30 were marketing ones. So the amount of airtime we got, the quality of our creative, the number of samples, the displays, the distribution levels, the customer service satisfaction level. We'd gone through probably one of the best bits of planning I've ever been involved in, actually, in terms of proper team, forensic, really well done. And what was interesting is, as an exec, we decided to have shared KPIs and that we're going to get bonused on the collective, not on the individuals. So before that, I'd have marketing bonused on that. But this was like the HR director suddenly went, so John, how's your new creative going? And this is where I started work with System One, actually, because I brought System One in to help me do my advertising testing, because I committed to making sure that no advert would go out unless it was better than we'd ever done before and it reached a certain threshold. So anyway, I learned a lot, actually, and I made it my commitment that I wouldn't leave without smashing every KPI. One of my most proudest things is I can't remember what day I got fired, but I think the day before I got fired, we'd had the Japanese come in from Tokyo. We'd had our quarterly review meeting with, the very, very senior people. And I'd literally presented for most of the meeting because they all wanted to know how the marketing campaign was going. And I was able to share completely green set of KPIs. And I went through, we're on target for distribution, for advertising, for media, for sampling, for, activation, for packaging, everything you could do to rescue the brand I had done. And then I got fired the next day. And then bless him, Stephen, who was my wonderful head of marketing on Lucozade, messaged me about 12 weeks later, said, listen, mate, just for your own sanity, we grew in the last 12 weeks 8% as a brand. And he said, I thought you want to know that so that, all your effort,
all the foundations that you actually put into it, that's sort of like bearing fruit, then you need.
It's one of the nicest texts I've ever had. Those things mean a lot in those moments, don't they? When you go, I took the hit because I was set up as the fool guy. Because
you were in the hot seat at that moment.
Yeah, totally. So, I remember chatting to the CEO as I left, and he said, look, I can't fault the job you've done. It's just your ability to manage the politics of a big organization, and I can't disagree with him. I can't. And so
I think some people like being in that position and can survive in that sort of environment, whereas I actually would see that as almost like a compliment. Because it's you being yourself, and like rather than adapting to the conformity of a big machine and how to navigate through it. You just sort of like, fair enough, you end up like cannon fodder, but at least you went out, sort of you fell on your sword.
I agree. I would never want to betray my values, and I'd never want to. I'll always be, as an individual, I'll always be honest, and I always tell you exactly what I think of what you're doing, or how I think, if I think the marketing is good. So I really struggle in those, senior meetings where you've got, lots of important people and they ask you a tough question. I'm not stupid. I'm going to position it in the right way, and I'm probably fairly good at that. But I'm not going to do an outright lie, as I saw colleagues literally saying black is white and white is black, because of who asked the question. And also when, if the CEO wants to debate something and wants your opinion, I remember, so he would say, right, what do we think on this topic? And me being slightly too talkative would go, oh, I think this, and I'll tell you what I really thought. And then, oh, how about someone? And then he would give away a bit about what he thinks. And then the rest of the room immediately would go, oh, Peter, no, we were thinking along the same lines. And I'd have chatted to them 5 minutes ago out in the corridor and going, oh, this is a stupid idea. Of course, we're not going to say that. In the meeting, it's like, oh, no, great idea. We should do that,
Going back to leadership, like that's like one thing I talk about all the time, and it's something I try and learn, is to be the last to talk, because even if it's not a conscious decision by your team, it might be subconscious. It just leads to group think. Whereas if you give you're in a meeting with everyone and you're coming up with ideas on like innovation, for example, or a plan of attack for the next quarter or whatever it is, and you tell everyone what you're thinking first as the leader, in some way, shape or form, everyone's just going to agree with what you've said. You might get a few, people pipe up and sort of say, which is what you want, by the way. You want people saying, oh, actually, I don't think that's the right way of going.
Yeah.
As long as you're the type of, I suppose, leader that doesn't have a huge ego, which is less likely in a massive company like that, because you're used to barking orders and people doing what you say.
I remember I heard a story around this time, and I can't remember it totally accurately, but I think it was from Ford in the US a few years ago, where they had a change of CEO and their sales were on the decline and they were missing targets, and the CEO came in and said, right, each department present your KPIs, and they're all green. And he said, go away and rethink your KPIs and come back and present them in a week's time, thinking obviously they're going to come back with some more sensible ones, because it can't be green if the sales down. Come back, green again. And he said, no, we're clearly not getting anywhere, are we? And then they had a big product recall, And this one guy who was the after sales guy, I think it was, came back and said, actually, the reason our sales are down is we're getting a lot of complaints about this particular component. That means we have to recall the cars. It's costing us a lot of money. Our customer satisfaction has taken a nosedive. And he said, brilliant, right. Now, everyone else in this room, this is now your problem, and you're all going to fix his problem, because he's the first person that has actually been able to acknowledge what's gone wrong in this business. And I'm going to promote him, and you lot are going to work for him and help him sort this problem out. I just got tingles down my spine and went, that's how it should be. It should be about getting to the truth, what's really going on. Because if you're in this ivory tower of, hall of mirrors kind of situation, you're just going to be reacting to the perception of what's going on, not the reality.
But if you're a leader who doesn't listen to the staff, you're going to suddenly be surrounded by people with nothing to say.
Yeah. Just sycophants that will go, oh, yes, sir, no, sir,
That's the top and bottom of it. No, you won't get any innovation. You won't get any ideas, because no one will think that they're going to be listened to, or their ideas are going to be taken seriously. They're just going to agree with what you've said, and everything that happens thereafter will just be your input into it. And pretty soon people get sick of that in their own career, and they'll just leave for a better environment where people do listen to what they've said, and they do have projects that they can run by themselves, and they are able to, for instance, speak up against your boss. Because if you're the boss, you want people to be like, oh, do you know what, boss? It's I don't think this is the best idea. I don't think that the idea that you've put forward, even as my boss, is going to make us hit our objectives or hit the mission. I actually think we've got a better idea. You want that environment. You want people to be able to be confident to actually speak their mind, because that will lead ultimately to overall, the best for everyone, the best for the team, the best for the company, the best for the individuals. You'll have people who are bought into the whole thing because they've got ownership of ideas and ownership of problems.
Whereas the thing I learned in each of those different scenarios, as well as there's a great book called The Founder's Mentality, and it talks about founder-led businesses and what they do differently that makes them successful versus management-led ones. One of the principles in it is called frontline focus, which we actually adopted, ironically, in Suntory. And it's very, very, very good, because what it means is they called it the Gemba, actually, which is the Japanese for down on the ground, effectively, at the coal face, we'd say it, But it's like when you're actually in with the people that buy your product and with the customers that buy it and sell it for you, and it's not difficult to work out what to do, but it's when you're detached and away from the front line, and your influences are coming from departmental agendas and politics and who's got the power. It's amazing. The further away you are from the front line, the more distorted your decision making will come. And actually, the best, with that Lucasade situation, actually, I was forced to get on the front line and go out and do the sampling, go and sit in the research groups, go and read all the tweets. And it becomes very obvious what you have to do. Very obvious. What's hard is implementing it, because of the politics and the power struggles and all those kinds of things. But always, the power is in that frontline focus and knowing your customers.
That's similar to something in the military called decentralized command. So basically, the frontline troops and the frontline leaders on the battlefield are the ones who are best placed to make tactical decisions based on what's in front of them. Can you imagine being on a war and you're on the front lines and you're having to radio back up the chain of command 5 or 6 places to say, this is the situation, what do I do? And the guys who are making those decisions aren't on the front line. They haven't got your tactical awareness, and they're not in the best place to make decisions. It's the same in business. The people who are best placed to make those decisions are the people who are actually at the coalface and actually on the front line, speaking directly to your customers and who are actually interacting. It's not the people who are sat in their ivory towers.
It's totally right. And it's interesting, actually. I did a study tour to Tel Aviv. Really fascinating thing that's put on by a media company I was working on, to meet lots of innovators and startups. And I think in 3 days, we met 40 startups. And the idea was to get inspiration and meet them and understand them. What's interesting in Israel is that everybody goes and does 4 years in the army. And one of the things they all say is in the army there, you're taught to make decisions on the battlefield. And in fact, you're taught the skills to respond to a dynamic, changing war environment.
Yeah.
And they actually say that's one of the things that equips them to be one of the most innovative countries on the planet, because they've got that ability to not only take risk, but also to respond, take responsibility from a very young age, and take control of situations. And that's a very cultural thing. But they all learn that and put that into business.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's such a big thing that I don't think a lot of people maybe appreciate, especially in the big companies like that. And they think that if you think about speed as well, speed of decision making, when it's in front of you and you're on the front line, you can make a decision straight away, and you know that you've got fair enough, you've got to work within bandwidth of like parameters, and you can't overstep the mark in certain areas and all the rest of it. But when you have to go back up the chain of command and speak to your superiors at every detail, it slows everything down. In the process.
Well, actually, you reminded me. I mean, when I did my C brand job at Britvic, one of the things we did for a period of time, we didn't keep it up, but I wish we had, was once a month we had a team of 10 or 12 vans that would literally sell directly to the independent stores, in central London, that were kind of high profile. And once a month, we all went out on the vans as different groups, and we'd all come back, spend the morning on the vans, and we'd all come back in the afternoon, and we'd write up what we learnt. And I kid you not, we would come up with easily 20 powerful insights and ways to improve our product and our marketing, because we'd talk to shop owners. We'd ask, they'd tell us about, well, actually this case configuration you've been giving us doesn't work because of this, that, and the other. And you go, oh, yeah, that's interesting. You could get insight you would never, ever, ever get at head office. And literally it meant all my team knew exactly what to do and exactly how to make things better, because they spent that time on the ground. And I think it's one of the reasons why founders, I think, are so good, because they keep that connection with their customer, that a way a management team that just gets dropped in, at a high level, don't have that intimacy with the front line.
Definitely. Awesome. We've obviously been talking a while, so we'll rattle through the last bit of it if you've still got time.
Yeah, go for it.
So you've left, or you've just been fired. What happened? Like, what happens next, and where did you go from there?
Well, I did the double in the kind of negative sense. So, I mean, I don't know. Timing is a fine thing. So, as I'm walking the plank off Suntory, I also get a phone call from headhunter to say Brewdog are looking for a CMO, and I'm a massive Brewdog fan. I mean, I'm not the biggest beer drinker, but I really admire the business they've created and the brand they've created and what they've done. Hugely admire it. And so this was happening at the same time I thought I might get fired. Yeah. So I thought, you know what, I need to investigate this. Met James Watt, the founder. Probably the most impressive person I've ever seen up close in a work environment. Incredible. I mean, the speed. Well, second, sorry, mate. Yeah, I assume that goes without saying, right? But, you and I, right? We're obviously, no one else compares.
Top of our game, mate.
Exactly, mate. Exactly. And I mean, give you an example of the guy. So, I didn't have a normal interview. So I'd go up and meet him in the office, and he would just go, look on the wall over there. There are 6 designs. Tell me which design is the best one and why. And then he would switch his laptop around and go, I'm going to launch a new website. These are the 3 designs. Tell me which one I should do. And he'd go, what's the best website you saw? What's the best website you've ever seen? And what can you learn from that you can tell me? And he means now. He doesn't mean go away, think about it. He means tell me now. It would go, give me 3 ways I can double my business in 6 months. It was that kind of thing. And I loved it. Loved it, because it was just like being on your toes like you never have done all before. Boom, 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 boom. And I sometimes think too fast, and I'm always having ideas all the time about stuff, and really connected. So anyway, so he offered me the job, which is brilliant, and I accepted. And I was having a debate at the time: do I go freelance and start my own business and do that kind of thing? So I dabbled with that while I was thinking about this, but I ended up saying yes. And I have to say, genuinely had an incredible time, but it was never going to work. And I tell you why, because the first couple of months with James were brilliant. I mean, I was very inspired. Give an example of how he operates. For example, he would text me, like literally one line would just go, give me 5 ways I can, double the number of bars we've got in the world by next month or something. It would just be like a ridiculous ask. And, and then what he would do is, when we were together, he would just literally print it out, whatever I submitted, and just go, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. Right. You've got 1 week for that, 2 weeks for that, make that happen, give it back to me, and off we go. And that's okay on the first 1 or 2. But when that keeps on going and keeps on going, what I found was difficult was I was just trying to understand the business, trying to understand him, trying to get up to speed. And then at the same time, it was ramping up. So I just got to this point where I thought, I can't do this. And I'm not sure how it's possible to do it, sort of thing. So I hadn't got the confidence of the business and the relationships and the tools yet to do things at the speed and so on that he got. Would I have done anything differently? I'm not sure I could have done in the time I had. Anyway, he had this great phrase, which I really like, which he would often start a sentence with, "This only works if." And what he meant was, this whole business only works if our beer is the best in the world, or this only works if our people work 10 times quicker. This only works if we have better people, in these positions, whatever. So, and I remember writing him a presentation, which was, this only works if, in terms of, and I'd written this little manifesto for, I said, look, James, this, our relationship and what I'm doing will only work if this, but I didn't get a chance to present it because he kind of fired me before I had a chance to sort of come back with a proposal, knowing that I think he was getting frustrated that I couldn't turn things around in the speed. Yeah. Because it wasn't about the ideas. The ideas, he and I were just brilliant, bouncing off all the time. But it was just the ability to execute.
He sounds like such a difficult person to work for, like in that sense, and like, just the speed of what he's coming at you with ideas, and obviously the natural build up that would be created, because they're not small ideas by the sound.
No, not at all. Not
massive things. So,
well, he combines crazy levels of ambition with an insatiable desire to make it happen very, very, very fast, with a huge appetite for risk and it going wrong. And of course, he's the only one that can't get fired, right? So what happens is, if you're delivering it and you let him down, you're out, sort of thing. But of course, he's made plenty of mistakes himself. He's very open about that. He's often putting LinkedIn posts about his top 10 things I failed at, or top 10 things I learned. And I think at number 4 was appointing a management team.
I actually saw that post. I remember seeing that post, and I was like,
I'm glad to make it at number 4. Claim to fame. I'm 4th on James's failure list. But anyway, but you know what? I absolutely no regrets, and left on great terms, to be honest. Or not great terms. I left with respect for him and how he does things, knowing that probably it was never going to. I mean, I think the only thing, I wish I'd had a bit more time to try and learn, respond to it, get under, really understand how to make things happen at the speed, build a team around me that knew how to do it, but it wasn't to be.
Amazing. Okay, so moving on from there, you went freelance, and is it that was the time you set up the podcast, was it?
It was exactly that, mate. Because so I guess if you look at that year, it was flipping heck. I got fired twice in the same year. It was like, oh geez, it's me.
Proper feather in the cap.
Yeah, exactly. Claim to fame. The guy that got fired twice. Should have taken the hint. But obviously, I found myself out of work in a time that wasn't particularly good to get back into work either. Yeah. And what happened? It was really nice, actually. What happened is I very quickly got calls from people from my network. And they all end up being very similar calls, actually. And in fact, they were all from agencies of different kinds: design agencies, PR agencies, research agencies, and it was all broadly the same thing. It was, John, you're an experienced CMO. Can you come and teach us how to pitch, or can you come and help us write a presentation for CMOs, or can you talk to us about business development? And so really what I did is I wrote this initial thing called 10 Things You Never Knew About a CMO, which were basically my top tips for if you're pitching to a CMO, trying to win business, here's my 10 best bits of advice. And I turned that into a presentation, into a workshop, into a bit of content really. And ended up freelancing for a few different companies, half a day, day a week, 2 days a week, that kind of thing, and loved it. But what I learned though was how uncertain that freelancing gig is. You have amazing months. I managed to fall down some stairs and break an ankle, and weirdly,
not a neck
this time. Yeah, exactly. I told you I was injury prone, and I couldn't work I couldn't travel or work, because this is before Zoom became a thing, really. Obviously, now it would have been fine, but I couldn't really work for a month. And suddenly any reserves of cash I had just disappeared. And I'm like, oh man, I'm shocked at how quickly you go from nice and secure to suddenly panicking. And that felt very uncomfortable. But in that time, so two things happened, right? The one thing that happened is each of those agencies came back to me and said, we love the pitch training. We love the presentations you're writing. Can you introduce us to CMOs? And actually, do you know what? I couldn't. And of course I knew some, but actually what I realized is, as a CMO myself, my network was ad agencies, media companies, customers.
You don't rub shoulders with CMOs very often. Very often.
Yeah, it's not like we all go and play golf like the sales directors do on a Friday afternoon. You know what I mean? It's like it's just not a connected. It's not a connected. There are some networky things, but they're not that prevalent. So I basically went, okay, I've got a bit of time. I've been listening to podcasts, starting to get into it. And actually, I don't have a way of networking with other CMOs that could help these businesses I was working with out. So I thought, I'll start my own podcast. And actually, if I can create good quality content for CMOs, A, it's got an opportunity to invite some interesting people on the show. But B, I've got content that hopefully will create a following over time that I could do it. So basically, it was designed to be a content platform for me and a networking tool. Now, at the same time as I'm just starting this, System One, who Jon, the founder, he and I met on this Daimler-Benz training program. Do you remember I was telling you about way back? Yeah. So he and I met on that, and I remember being very impressed by what he had to say about behavioral science and advertising. And I remembered that when I was in my in the thick of it on Lucozade relaunching, and had this big, you got to relaunch remarket our way out of the problem. And one of the questions that the MD, the CEO, said to me is, I want you to guarantee this advertising will work before I sign it off. And I remember Jon saying he had a way of basically testing advertising before it goes live and predicting how it will do. So I hired him and his team to come in and help with Lucozade. So we had worked together in the past. He was one of the, he had called me in and said, help me write a CMO pitch, which we had done. But that had just mushroomed. So it started at half a day. And then before I knew what I was doing, it was kind of growing and growing. So he ended up saying, well, why not join the team full time? So, about 18 months ago, I never in my life ever thought I'm going to go and join a research company. It's just, it really genuinely is not in my life's plan. I never thought, oh yes. And it felt weird because I was in an environment where, a CMO in a big company has got a ton of respect. You're the big dog, right? And you got teams of 60 working for you, got big budgets, agencies falling over themselves to impress you. And then suddenly you're in a place where people are like, what's this CMO guy doing? And he talks a different language, and we're a research business. We love talking about data and methodologies and statistical significance and all this kind of stuff. And there's me going, right, we're going to do this, Anyway, it's actually been a blast, and I'm thoroughly enjoying it. And it's felt like a fresh start of kinds, because what's lovely about it, and I'm really thankful to Jon for giving me the chance, is that I can use my CMO experience, and it's very, very, very helpful to me to help a research company that has got a brilliant proposition sell to marketers and ad agencies and so on. So I'm actually in a unique position where I can add a lot of value very quickly to a company and make a big, big difference by using my experience, even though I'm probably doing a role that I never imagined I'd do. So it's got like and the other thing is, I get via the podcast and via this job, I get to meet so many clever people in the kind of, in the marketing, advertising, research world. So I also feel like I'm learning as well as contributing, with all my experience and skills that I picked up over the years. So it's not where I thought I'd be, but it's a lot of fun, and it's been a great place to, be at the moment.
Amazing. So just to round this out then, John. So going back to our original bio, got fired twice in 1 year.
Check.
Tick. On the KGB wanted list. Check.
Check.
Appeared on Have I Got News? Check.
Check.
Caused a national security alert? Check.
Check.
Broke my neck and survived? Check.
Check.
One thing we haven't talked about, and if we talk about briefly, is so there's two left on that list. There's
go on.
Burnt my house down.
Yeah.
And there's on the 40 over 40 list. So which one out of the
two? Which one's the lie? Okay, it's the 40 over 40 list. It's the lie.
Yeah.
So, which is funny actually, because when I first shared that list, everyone was like, "Oh, of course you've been on the 40 over 40 list, haven't you?" You get those really stupid, Power 100 marketer list, the most influential marketeers. I don't know, maybe it's ego, but I've always kind of envied the people on there going, geez, man, just getting on there must mean a pay rise and, kudos and the headhunters calling you and stuff like that. Yeah. And anyway, so I've laid that one to rest a long time ago. And I've always thought, do you know what? Why don't they have 40 over 40 and 50 over 50? Because the amount of experience out there, let's celebrate that wisdom and the collective power. Anyway, so I want to create the 40 over 40, 50 over 50. So that was actually part ambition to me, put that on the list. But anyway, the house burning down. So
but anyway, the house burning down.
This is my party trick.
Just the way it rolls off the tongue.
So the house burning. You can see I've recovered, the scars are over, which is good. Oh mate, this is just, you look at your life and go, you see in films houses burning down and people escaping from fires, and you just think that is something that never will happen. And last Christmas, not the one just gone, the one before, there were 10 of us. We had family over. Everyone sat down. I always cook Christmas dinner.
Yeah.
It's a family tradition, and we'd all been in the lounge, and I called everyone in, and I know when the fire started because I'd set a little reminder to myself 10 minutes before the main course was due to get everyone in and get them drinks and get them chatting and eating the starter sort of thing. So I called everyone in, and the beeper goes off, and I'm getting the roast potatoes out the oven, and the smoke alarm suddenly goes off at the same time. Now, this is very normal in our house because whenever I cook, the smoke alarm goes off, right? Because I love frying steaks and I always forget to shut the door. You know what it's like with this thing.
Yeah.
So
same in my house.
This is normal, right? So my wife just goes, "Oh, typical." I let the husband cook, and then we'll set the alarms off. She opens the door and then screams her head off, and I drop the roast potatoes, across the floor because what's happened. And then she says, the house is on fire. And I look round, and I could tell it's like something I've never seen before, like bright orange flames coming out of the lounge, going up the hall, up the stairs, and thick black smoke kind of on the ceiling. But because we were on the other side of the house and, we were chatting away, couldn't hear it. It literally, it was raging.
It took over.
And of course, then panic happens, right? And I just go, get out the back. I'm shouting to everybody, get out the back, right? And we run to the back door, right? And this is probably the most heart-stopping moment in my entire life, right? The back door is locked and there's no key, and it's the only route out the house, right? So I remember in my panic, I try and force my youngest daughter Lily, who's slim, out the window, and it's not wide enough, right? I'm just thinking, what do I do? Can't bash the door down because it's a modern PVC door and stuff, and there's no key there. Now I always leave the key in the door, always. The key is always there, but we had guests round, and so maybe someone moved it. I don't know. So I do the stupid thing, and I try and go out. I try and get to the front door to find the keys, which is where the fire's coming from. But I can't get there. I just can't, because by that point you're dizzy, it's noisy, it's disorientating. By this point, there's smoke everywhere. You can't even see where you're going, sort of thing. And then I think, okay, the only other way out of this is to smash the window at the front and jump out of the front window, right? And so I go to the front window, I do that, and then I'm literally shouting everyone gets to the front, but I can't see them, right? Because by this point, there's so much smoke, I can't see my hand, let alone let alone the back of the house. I'm just shouting, but it's so noisy because you've got the noise of the fire, you've got the smoke alarm, it's disorientating, you're panicking. I can't hear the other people who are at the back door, with the locked door, and I'm going, get out of the front, get out of the front. Anyway, eventually I hear my brother, and my brother said, John, we're out, get yourself out. And at that point, I jump out the front window, and literally I'm wearing jeans, a t-shirt, and one sock and one slipper. I mean, that's all I've got, right? And then I run around the back, and I meet them at the back of the house. What had happened is, and I didn't know this, and this is the miscommunication, my daughter had found the key,
right?
But I didn't know. So I'm thinking, this is it, and we've got to somehow get out the front. They don't know. They think I'm in the fire. They're panicking at the back, thinking, "Where's John gone? What's going on?" But my daughter's found the key and got out, but I didn't know this, so it's complete confusion. Yeah. My wife's on the phone to fire brigades. Within 6 minutes of her call, 2 fire engines are there. The lads are in there. They're literally on it. And we're all just, it's very cold as well. It's Christmas Day. It's flipping freezing. Yeah. We're out there absolutely shivering and shaking. And then we're sat there by the side of the road, and what we're watching is, if you imagine black smoke just coming out of every window, it's just like it's like bonfire night. It's just like literally watching your house as a fire. It's just the weirdest thing. But then you suddenly go, where do I sleep tonight? Oh, I tell you what was very profound, and this really shook me, was the chief fire officer came up to me and he said, look at me. He said, listen to me. You are homeless. I need you to understand this. You might not be thinking straight right now. You do not have a home. I cannot let you go back in that building. You are not staying there tonight. Do you have anywhere to stay? Because if you don't, my next call is the Red Cross. And I'm like, and in your life's plan, you don't think, I'm going to be staying in a Red Cross shelter for the night. It never occurs to you.
Christmas Day,
yeah. Now we we phone around the local pubs, and we end up finding a local pub where they're meant to have a wedding on Christmas Day, and it got cancelled, and they've got some stables and they've got some converted rooms and stuff, and they said, look, you can have those. So we end up staying in a pub for the first night, then we're in the Travel Inn, then we go to we get upgraded to the Premier Inn and stuff like this. Anyway, so the first few weeks we're just kind of moving around, cheap hotels. But yeah, so within 10 minutes, because the fire, we think, was a candle falling off the mantelpiece onto the Christmas tree, lit the Christmas tree, that lit the sofas, that lit the presents, and the whole thing started. But had 3 crime scene investigators, because the other thing I didn't know, and this is something you learn in these situations, is they treat it as arson when this sort of stuff happens. I mean, this is a real shock to me, but I think they said more house fires are arson than aren't. Now when they came round, they looked at I'm not being pretentious, but they looked at the postcode and stuff, said probably it's legit. But, they said, you'll be surprised how often it's arson. But you have to, we had the police, CSI, fire brigade, CSI, and the insurance investigation.
Of course, I was going to say insurance must be like big in that, like trying to work out what's happened there.
This is where the story takes a twist, because you suddenly, you're looking at your house on fire, and you then think, have I got insurance? Now, I don't know about you, but insurance is one of those things you just renew every year, don't you think about? And we've had the same insurance.
Detail of it and stuff.
We've had insurance for 16 years since the house was built, right? I've never thought about it once. I set it up, direct debit, not thought about it for 16 years. And then I think, oh, who's it with? Who do I call? It's Christmas Day. No one's out. So firstly, it wasn't open. That's the first thing. Ended up at some emergency number where they said, look, we'll loan you some money. We'll get you in somewhere, and then we'll sort it out later, sort of thing. So that happened. But then I got a call from them, and they said, Mr. Evans, how many bedrooms do you have? I said, 4 bedrooms. Your insurance policy doesn't cover you for 4 bedrooms. And I said, oh, come on. They said, no, you haven't got the right insurance cover. I'm like, what do you mean? Oh no, we've got you down for 3. So anyway, then said that conversation. I said, no, it's definitely 4. Anyway, I then got a letter, right? The letter was from a lawyer on behalf of the insurance company saying, dear sir, our records show that you have misled us in the information provided to us for the purpose of insurance, and you've only insured for 3 bedrooms. we'd like to point out that therefore your insurance is invalid and you are not covered. Yeah. And as far as we're concerned, we have no liability or whatever. God. So I'm like, well, I'm pretty sure it's 4. I don't remember looking at the documents and this sort of thing. So obviously I then think, I can't pay for a new house on my own, and also, by the way, a mortgage company doesn't lend you money if your house is being rebuilt because they can't value it. So I discovered that later as well. Anyway, so I then thought this cannot be right. So, but of course got no way to prove it. So what I did is I phoned up the original mortgage provider from 16 years ago. And I said, can you get me the archives and can you find the survey done on my house? Because the original mortgage and insurance were combined, right? Originally, that's how it worked. And anyway, bless her, she was very helpful and she found it and she said, yeah, it's a 4-bed survey we did. And I said, can you confirm that the insurance was connected to the survey? Because they were the same policy number. Yes, sir, they are connected. I thought, okay, well, at least it was set up correctly. And then the second thing I did was I phoned my mortgage broker and I said, could you do a screenshot of when I renew it, when you key in the data, can you do a screenshot to show that at least I gave you the right information, right? So that, I've done my best. That came back 4 beds. And the last bit, I was very happy about this. I phoned up the insurance company pretending to be a new customer and saying, oh, I'm just going to buy this house. This is the postcode. This is the number of bedrooms. Can you give me a quote? The quote was precisely what I've been paying in my insurance premiums. So I then said, oh, dear Mr. Insurer, it was originally set up 4 bedrooms. My mortgage broker has got record of screenshots saying 4 bedrooms, and I've been paying for 4 bedrooms. Not only have I paid for 4 bedrooms, I've been paying the no claims, the non-discounted one for my. So by the way, I've actually been paying you the full rate, and you've not even given me any no claims discount for 16 years. So I think you owe me some money. Anyway, I then got a phone call a week later with a massive apology, and they'd made a mistake, and it wasn't my fault. But for 3 weeks after the fire, we were living in I was going, house is burnt down and I'm not insured. I'm not going to have nowhere. Anyway, from that point, the insurance company were amazing, right? Yeah. I think they were kind of extra helpful.
So they had messed up. It would have been like what, an administrative error on their part?
It was an input error.
Oh my god.
They what had happened is they'd changed computer systems and they went back to the old system and found it said 4 beds, but they'd inputted it as 3 beds when they switched systems, and then they'd worked out where the error came from. So massively apologetic.
How stressful must that have been?
Massive.
Your house burns down and then the insurance company is basically trying to dodge a bullet and be like, oh.
Well, the other thing, I remember the day after we only had the clothes we were wearing, so we went to the shops on Boxing Day, and I remember walking into Superdry and just going pants, socks, t-shirt, jumper. I didn't care what I was buying. I was just going, I need 2 of everything, and walk through the store and 500 quid down on this. And my wife and kids did the same. I remember she got 30% off in the shop because she told them the story, and she said, right, you're getting my staff discount. This is going through on my card, and everyone was trying to be, really helpful. But you're starting again, aren't you? You're just literally, the clothes you're wearing, I mean, we used to joke last year that, I'd say to my daughter, oh, is that a new top? And they're like, Daddy, all our tops are new. Nothing's old, and then once the insurance company had agreed to pay, the other strange thing is you then go through a process of getting a builder in to give you a quote for doing the rebuilding, which we did, and they do the same, and then you kind of negotiate on the final settlement. They then actually, in this case, they paid us the check, and that was it, which is the weirdest thing, because at first I thought, oh, they're really nice. This very large check has appeared in our bank account. I was thinking, this is great. Because what I didn't realize is that means we're liable to rebuild the house, and we're effectively project managing it. So the last year, in fact, we're just finishing the last bits, in fact, today and tomorrow. Right. But we've spent a year building a house, pretty much from scratch. The shell's in existence, but the roof down has been rebuilt. And effectively, we've had the money, but of course, like everyone does on these shows, we've overspent because, of course, you start tinkering with the design and go, we'll upgrade that, we'll convert that room, we'll move that around. So it's been an interesting year. But while the pandemic's been, well, I'll tell you what, I made the mistake of, I can't remember what bit of social media, going, So 2020 has started rather badly. It can only get better from here. And then, because everyone's like moaning, John, why did you say that?
Yeah.
pandemic hit, kind of 2 months later. But the pandemic's largely passed me by because I've been rebuilding the house and trying to fix
Bloody
it.
hell.
But,
what a mental story to close off on, John.
Yeah,
Well,
there you go. So check your insurance and check your fire alarms.
Yeah, basically, yeah. Well, listen, that seems like an amazing place to wrap things up. I think we've been talking for about 12 hours by this point.
I think we've gone the full Joe Rogan, haven't we?
Full Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan's got nothing on us.
Exactly.
But listen, thank you so much for coming on. I massively appreciate it. What an interesting story, and such an interesting character. And yeah, thanks once again. It's massively appreciated.
Great.
Yeah, and I'll speak to you again soon.
Will do, mate.
Thank you.